there, and welcome to my channel. I'm Crafty Kathy, and I have for you a compilation of my most favorite DIYs from last season. It is spring and summer, and since it's a compilation video, they may not be in exact order, but please comment and let me know what you think. Now let's jump in.
To start off with, we are going to be using the IOD's transfer book called the Seed Catalog to do our first couple of DIYs with.
I got this sign at the thrift store. I only paid probably $3 or $4 for it. I can't remember. I have had this thing forever. And you see on the back of it, it's got a saying on it. But that's not going to bother us. We're not going to even use that side. We're going to use this back side because I love that it has this border around it. And so it looks like it's framed already. That's perfect. And I like that old rough lumber look of it. I measured it out just for reference. It's 30 long by 12 high. And my plan for this is to do a crackle. It's been a really long time since I've done crackle, and I thought, why not give it a whirl? I'm going to use the Dixie Belle crackle. I've never used it before. And I'm first going to put down DIY paint, Dark and Decrepit. Now, Dark and Decrepit is a top coat, and it's a patina. And it did say if you want your wood to be like the color that it is under there, then use like a top coat. Well, I decided to use a color top coat. Why not? Because the first color that you put down in a crackle is going to be the color that your cracks are, if that makes sense, like the cracks. I want mine to be dark and decrepit, so that's why I'm using Dark and Decrepit. Now, you see I'm not trying to be especially careful or anything on here. I pretty much just slapped it on there, and I painted the whole thing, the front and the back and all the sides of this. After your first coat is dry, then you're going to grab your crackle. Now, like I said, I've never used this before, and I was so pleased at the way it turned out. I'm not a huge fan of the Dixie Belle products because I'm a DIY girl through and through. But there are a couple of products from Dixie Belle, like this one and the Slick Stick, that I stand by and say are good products. I didn't do anything special. I pretty much slapped it on. I did not do it thick. I didn't do it thin. I just kind of did, you know, just a normal application of this. Like I said, I didn't know what to expect, and I was just hoping and praying for the best, you know. I did notice that this stuff is really thick, and you don't have to go and buy a special crackle. You don't have to do that. You can actually do this same thing with Mod Podge or with like just regular old school glue. Now, I got this crackle. Somebody gave it to me. I think a subscriber sent it to me, so I'm going to use it. I went around the edges, but I didn't do the back part. Now, it did take quite a while for that to dry, but when it finally dried, I grabbed my color beadboard. This is going to be my top color. And it says, do not go back and forth. You make one swipe of paint. Well, this is a rough board, so it was kind of hard to do one swipe of paint. So by the time I was finished, I figured out it was best to do it in smaller strokes. It didn't say that you had to do it in one long stroke. It just said that it just needed to go one direction and don't backstroke. Just go zoop and you're done, you know. So I did that all the way on the front of my board here and then around what I'm going to call the frame. And then I just set it aside and patiently let it dry. And it almost started crackling immediately. I was really, really surprised. When that white coat dried, this is what it looked like, and I love it. It's exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to look like an old board that you found in Granny's barn from a million years ago that's just been sitting there, and time has just done its thing on it, you know. I have picked out 4 different transfers that I want to use on this piece, but I don't know how I'm going to set them out just yet. I do want to, of course, use the bigger ones because this is a bigger sized project. I know that I want the one that says seeds on it, and I've got to use my very favorite one, which is the one that has that pink dahlia on it. I love it. But I want to challenge y'all with something. You know, when we look at these transfers, we think to use them as a whole. I want to challenge you to use it in a different way. Just cut off the words. Now, of course, I cannot cut off that word that says seeds there because it's attached to the flower, basically, and it wouldn't look right if I cut it off. But most of the words there, I could cut off, and even if they are very close to the flowers like this one was, you'll see there in the white part of the flower and in the pink part of the flower, I had to kind of fussy cut around it. I had to be really careful because I didn't want to use or lose my beautiful dahlias. And what I do to make it look right is I cut it out. Like I said, I fussy cut it, which means you go in and out of all the little grooves, you know. And if it looks kind of funny or doesn't look like the petal like it did before, I just kind of cut it to shape it that way. Now, it's just a trick of the eye, but it works like a charm, honey. And I cut off all of the words to all of these pictures, except for that word seeds, because like I said, you know, it was kind of attached. Now, don't you think for a minute that I'm going to waste all those beautiful words. I'm definitely going to use them. I just set them to the side for when I am going to need them, and I can use them in different projects. You don't even have to use them in the same picture they came off of. But for right now, I want to focus on my flowers and get in my mind the image that I want this to be. Now, I know that I wanted the flower basically in the middle that's going to say seeds, but I just had to kind of spread out things to where it looks like it's one big, huge piece, like one big transfer. And that's all I'm doing here is just kind of feeling my way around the transfer. Now, I know just by looking at this that the dahlias are kind of going to be in the background. Not to where they're not seen, but they're almost going to be a background piece. So that is going to be the very first thing that I put down. Anything that you feel that is going to be a background piece, just put it down first. And then the stuff that you definitely want to stand out, put it on last. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at it, it's going to look like one cohesive piece, not like 4 different transfers. But that's just my little hack on how to put it together to figure out, you know, how do I make this look right to the eye? And then always after you do your transfers, you burnish them. And that just means you use that little plastic sheet that it came off of and basically just rub it around on the top of it. And it just helps to get a better adhesion. And this is another little trick that I love to do is I cut my transfers down as low as I can like I am here on the word seeds because I want to know how much room I'm going to have on the side. The backing on this is white, so if I just laid it down, I couldn't see the other pattern beside it to know exactly where to put that flower that I'm putting down now. But since I cut the word seeds down on the sides, I could actually tell exactly where I needed to put this one at. What you do is they give you a little tool in every single one of the transfers that come out, and it's this little plastic piece I'm using, and you just kind of rub it back and forth over your image. And I like to hold up the edge of my little plastic piece because I feel like it makes it go on easier. Now I'm putting on the one with the word seeds, and you'll see what I'm talking about. See, it's going to fit right here, right in between those other two, and you can still see them perfectly. But the difference is, since I cut those down, you can get it close enough to where they're not overlapped or covering up one, you know? And you can see here how I like to use that, take the edge up and pull it. And that just helps me to get a better, I don't know, it just goes on easier for some reason. And once you do 1 or 2 of these transfers, they're just a piece of cake after that. I mean, they're a piece of cake anyways, but it just takes 1 or 2 times so you really feel confident in what you're doing. Now you can see what I'm talking about, how the dahlia and then that one on the right are kind of like in the background, and the one that says seeds is right out front. I hope that makes sense. And then I'm just putting on my last one, which is going to go on the left side of the dahlia there. Here is what I came up with. I definitely wanted some words on here, and you see what I mean by saying keep all your words because you're definitely going to use them. Now, I didn't want to put seeds down twice because this says northern grown seeds, and then on the front there it says seeds. So I just thought that looked kind of funny saying it twice, so I put northern grown up at the top, and then one says like maize catalog. One has a date on it, and then one says like plants, bulbs, flowers. I just put different stuff like that because to me it looks like an old sign that would be hanging outside a mercantile from way back when. Here is where I remembered one of those other transfers. It had wording across the top that was fairly big, and I thought that would be perfect for my little mercantile sign. And it says Allner Brothers, and I just cut that wording off and cut it down so I could see that it would go there perfect, and it does. And so it looks like Allner Brothers Seeds, and it all just came together so beautifully and so cohesive. You can just use bits and pieces of these transfers, and it looks like it was meant to be the whole time. And I'm just doing the exact same thing to all these transfers that I do. I hold up one edge, rub my little stick across it, and then I burnish it. And as a personal preference, I run a sanding sponge across it. You don't have to do this by all means if you don't like the way it looks, but you'll notice here, like I'm pointing to the pink flower, it just gives it a more vintage look if you ask me. And I just like the way that that looks, but a lot of people don't, so it just all depends on your preference. And then I added one more word at the bottom because I just couldn't stand it just seemed like it was bare and naked on that one side. And this one says Farm and Floral Guide. And that completes my little mercantile sign. Now, if you ask me, this is worthy to go up on the outside of any old seed and feed from way back in the day. Maybe even Granny and Pop would let me put it in their mercantile store. So let me know what you think about this one because I absolutely am in love.
I wanna jump around when I think about yesterday. Your smile, your style so fly, my oh my.
For DIY number 2, we're going to work on this cute little file drawer that I found at the thrift store. I paid $4 for it, and y'all are going to laugh whenever you listen to my reasoning, but hey, it's me, okay? So you probably won't be all that shocked. But it's got the drawer. It's just like brand new. I don't think anybody's really used it. It's made of steel. It's called Steel Master. That's how I know it's made out of steel. And yeah, it's just a little drawer. And y'all, this is a thing, so I'm not crazy. In my mind, you remember back in school where we had the card catalog. Okay, when I hear seed catalog, it just goes hand in hand with like books. And so am I crazy? But then I pulled this up on Pinterest, y'all, and there are people that actually do this that have their seeds like organized in these. We're going to use the color Mint Chip, which is by DIY Paint. I have only used this paint one time in my life, and why did I do that? I'm like, why haven't I used that more? This paint is so beautiful on a project, y'all. Look at this color. And this is just the first coat. You know, the first coat is usually kind of wonky, especially if you've got like a darker color like this. And not to mention, you know, this drawer is made of steel, so it's not the easiest thing to paint. It wanted to kind of streak up on me. I probably should have used some of that Dixie Belle Slick Stick, but I was walking on the wild side, and I wasn't about to do that this day. So I gave this thing 2 coats of the Mint Chip. And you know, every time that I dry down DIY paint, I have to show you the process. But I do have to admit, now in this Mint Chip, it didn't really change that much. It did get lighter now. It always does. But man, this color is just heavenly, y'all. I went through here, and the first thing that I saw that I wanted is the wording that's above little May. You know, my little cousin May there that's cutting her flowers out in the garden. She grew up in Mississippi, but you know she's from Tennessee. Come on, she's my cousin. So yeah, we're just cutting this little area off right here because I want that word May. I believe that whole top area said maize, and then it said something to the effect of southern grown seeds or something of that effect. And since it was southern, of course I picked that one. I mean, hello. And yeah, we're just got one of these little cards. Now, this is what I put on my stuff whenever I'm selling it in my booth. Just like a little card like this to say thank you and to put the price on it and stuff. I get these at Hobby Lobby, and I mean, they're just kind of like kind of like a cardboard, honestly. I cut it down so that it would slide in the front of my seed catalog, and I am taking the edge of the scissors and just kind of roughing it up. It's not cutting it by any means or anything, but it's making it all rough and willy-nilly, and I like that look. Hey, I'm from Tennessee. What do you expect? Now, here's the little part where I cut off the word May. Now, the apostrophe S I didn't need, and yes, there is a method to my madness, and you'll see in just a moment, but I just needed the May. So here I'm just putting it on my project, and it says May, and it says 1904. And I'm doing this the exact same way that I do all the others. I kind of hold up one little edge, and I use my tool, and it just comes off so easily. Now, from another piece of wording, there was a thing that said J. Steckler, I think. J. Steckler Company Ltd. So I'm cutting that part off. Now I'm putting it together, and it's going to say May J. Steckler. Okay, there is a method to my madness. I'm piecing this together so it all makes sense. Or at least it made perfect sense to me. So I'm just transferring these little pieces on here. And then I'm going to burnish it.
See, it says May J. Steckler Seed Company. Perfect.
Now the next thing that I'm going to cut off is just a very small piece, and it came off of our little picture of my cousin May, and it says Garden Manual, and that is actually what I am going to put on the front of my little seed card catalog. And I'm just kind of doing the exact same thing where you know, it's so easy to get these transfers. They stick to almost anything. They stick to this little piece of like cardboard type material. They stick to this steel, you know, that's on this catalog. I mean, well, card catalog or whatever you want to call this little file cabinet that I've got here. I mean, they stick to so many different things, and they're so easy to use. If you want to make a project look beautiful, Use a transfer because you're going to get a beautiful project every time. And I have never gotten anything from IOD that I'm not happy with. Ever, ever. There's so much detail and love put into it. And when you do somebody right, they're going to keep coming back. And that is exactly why they have so many people that love their products, because they do it right. You know what I'm saying? So here I'm just taking a little strawberry, and I pulled this strawberry off of that little piece that you just saw, and I stuck it on there. Now here's May's cousin. This is Loretta, okay? And Loretta is from Kentucky. And she's got her little cousin Tanya there with her. That's Loretta and Tanya. And I'm just basically doing the exact same thing right here at the top of this file cabinet that I've done all along on these transfers, is hold one little end up and then go across it. And when I get my transfer on, I make sure to burnish it. I think this picture is gorgeous. I hope you guys like it. Let me know what you think about it. I haven't seen this picture ever before.
Now here I'm just taking my little hand sander zippy thing, and it's got 120 grit on there, which is a little bit of a lower grit than the first one that I used. So it caused this transfer to be roughed up just a little bit more than that first one. But I like that look. It's totally up to you. You do you, boo.
So anyways, right here, I am taking this picture that's got like little cherries at the bottom, and I think it's got a strawberry on it, or maybe it's a tomato. And I'm just going there and cutting those pieces of fruit off, like the single pieces of fruit. So I ended up putting this picture that has this beautiful little bird on the side, and it ended up being a bird and some grapes. Now, like I said a minute ago, I took some of the other fruit off, and we're going to place those one on each side of the little bird picture here. I actually ended up using those on the opposite side. I'm sorry. There's my little strawberry, and then I'm going to add, I believe that's the grapes there. I tell you what, sometimes it's hard when you're editing to actually see what's on there. After you hit 40s, it just, I don't know. But this is that Rust-Oleum 2x matte clear, and I like to spray my projects with that because it's easy and simple, and it's done, you know, or at least I thought. But then I felt that this strawberry and the grapes there on the side was just very mundane, just hanging out by themselves. They needed something else. So I took these beautiful apples, and it's like a grouping of 3 apples, and it had writing on the bottom of it, but I cut that writing off because we didn't need it. We basically just needed the apples, and I placed it on there. And then we're done with the project. I hope you like this one. I think it's gorgeous, and please let me know what you think.
She thinks I'm a little lazy. I think she's a little crazy. We like summer and we like spring, watching wrestling in the ring. She ain't shy, she speaks her mind, tough as nails and smooth as wine. We burn hot as kerosene. Baby, we got our own thing. She ain't skinny and I ain't tall, and that don't bother us at all. I run naked through the yard. She flash every police car, drinking wine and getting tired, and shooting out the damn street lights. How does she put up with me? Oh, baby, we got our own thing. We got our own thing.
On to our third project. This is a gorgeous vase that I just happened upon at the thrift store yesterday. I paid $4 for it, which is not a bad price because you know the thrift stores has been ridiculous lately. And I love the handle on this. Look how beautiful that is. Now, it's kind of pot-bellied. That's the way we call it in the South. You know, it's got a big old belly on it. And we're going to use Gravel Road. Now, Gravel Road is a lighter shade of the DIY paint, but before I add any kind of paint, I wanted to add the Dixie Belle Slick Stick because Slick Stick is a good product for anything that don't want to hold paint, Like for instance, glass or vases like these. If you put a good coat of that slick stick on it, it just gives your paint something to adhere to. Now, I'm not sponsored by Dixie Belle or DIY Paint or IOD even by any means. Not at all. By the way, if y'all know the IOD sisters, tell them to call me up because we could work something out. But anywho, I just tell you guys what I think good products are. If I use something that I know is a good product, I'm going to tell y'all every single time. And speaking of good products, y'all know that on every one of my videos, I let you know that most of my products do come from Miss Lori. And she's at Milton's Daughter. She has a little store in New York. And if you guys ever shopped at her store, you would probably never buy from anybody else because Miss Lori is a sweetheart. And her website is www.miltonsdaughter.com. And if you use the code CraftyCathy10, you're going to get 10% off your first order. Now, there is an exception, I have to tell you. The DIY paints and the IOD stuff, they don't allow them to be discounted. So for those things, you don't get the discount. So please don't gripe at Miss Lori. It's not her fault. It's just the kind of the way it is. But anything else that you buy from her is 10% off on that first order. Now, she carries everything. She carries all of the brushes that you see me use. She carries different types of paint. She doesn't just carry DIY. She carries pentart products. She carries rice paper. She carries everything, honey. And y'all would absolutely love Miss Lori. So next time you need something, just go to her and you will love her. If y'all do want this seeds catalog or any of the transfers or anything from IOD, honey, she has it all and then some. So all I'm doing right here is just giving this thing one good coat of the slick stick so that my gravel road will cover it. And when that totally dries, then we're going to add 2 coats of the gravel road. Now, gravel road is a light shade of gray, and when it dries, it's almost like a white gray. I'm not saying light gray, I'm saying like a white gray. And I mean, I think it's a beautiful color, and I really do like it, and I thought that it would be beautiful behind the transfer that I intend to use on my little pot-bellied vase. Now, y'all didn't think that I was going to show you different stuff out of the seed catalog without using my little cousin May's picture, now did ya? We've got to use May. I think this is one of the prettiest transfers. I love this image so much. Now, with this being pot-bellied, it really gave me a challenge. Now, if you're just starting out with transfers, it's probably best that you don't do anything that has curved surfaces like this. Now, it's doable. Don't get me wrong. You can do it. However, it's not easy to do. It takes a little bit of practice, and still you may get some wrinkles on it because it's just harder to put it on a surface that's curved like this. And that's when I pull out the good old fingernail. Now, you guys that watch my channel a lot know that I love to use my fingernail instead of the little tool that they send you, because to me, especially if I'm needing to feel my way around, I can do it better with my fingernail. And I also, when I have something that's curved like this, I will literally take the scissors and cut a couple of places up the side of it, and it just makes it a little bit easier in my mind. Now, by the time I had finished this vase, I still did get a few wrinkles, but it doesn't bother me whatsoever. And even the people that buy my products, it doesn't seem to faze them at all that it has a little bit of wrinklage in it. Matter of fact, it kind of gives to the vintage look of the whole thing just a little bit more. Now, I'm not saying I prefer wrinkles, but I mean, they don't bother me. You know what I'm saying? So I just went up through this whole thing with my fingernail, and you'll see where I cut slits in the side of it, and it just helps me to get those edges down just a little bit better. But to be honest with you, I was just worried to death by the time that I had finished this because I couldn't see what I was actually doing underneath that plastic piece on the top. And I just kept saying, Lord, please don't let May's little face be all distorted. And I do have to let you know her face came out perfect. But you see me cutting these little slits in here. Like I said, in my mind, I think it helps. And I've seen a lot of people do that. So maybe it's a thing. I don't know. But I just did the best I could. And like I said, the wrinkles don't bother me too much. I guess it's kind of like life. Once you get over 40, you learn to embrace those wrinkles because there ain't a darn thing you can do about them. Now, a lot of times when you do have a little bit of wrinkles, you can go through and use your finger to kind of get them out just a little bit. And I did that. And I also put that 1890, and it's from just one of those random transfers from before. I've got my DIY white wax and my waxing brush, and I just put a small amount on there and I go over the whole vase. I make sure to get on all that beautiful scrolly on the handle there and on the sides, and I just got it all over the place, and I could not find the paper towel, so I just grabbed like a lint-free rag, which you can use that or paper towels or even baby wipes, and I just kind of wiped off the excess. I wanted a lot of white wax left on this vase, so I went over this 2 times, and that's all I did to this vase, and I hope you like this one.
This one is mine. He works hard and just don't quit. Even if his pants don't fit, Lord, he'll be the death of me. Baby, we've got our own thing. We eat good like you ought to do. Mashed potatoes and gravy too. Picnic table out in the back. He's only had one heart attack. Pecan pie beneath the moon. Paper plates and plastic spoons. We're as close as 2 sardines.
DIY number 4. This one is really short and sweet. This is a little TV tray that I found at the thrift store. I only paid $2 for it, and it's really pretty. It's a decent size. Now, I was not crazy about that sheen that's on the bottom part of it there, like the part that you would set your stuff on. The rest of it didn't bother me too bad. So what I did was I took my Dark and Decrepit, which is about the same color as the tray is in the first place, and I just added a coat all over this whole tray, and I wiped off the excess with a baby wipe. Now, Dark and Decrepit is like a top coat. You can even use it like a stain or like you would use a wax and just wipe off the excess, which is exactly what I did. The next thing that I did is I laid out this transfer. I absolutely love this one. It's got apples on it, and I didn't use a whole lot of the fruit so far, so I thought let's use fruit instead of florals. And I did want the word seeds above it and like a date for sure. So I started off by taking my little apples and laying them down and doing the exact same thing that I have done through the whole video with my transfers. I'm just using that little tool that they gave me while I hold up one end of my little transfer. And then I'm just going all the way over it, and it comes right off, and then I'm burnishing it. Then I laid down my word seeds, and I'm also going to put the date down. And I decided to put the date down underneath the picture of the apples because I felt like it needed something down underneath there. Then I found one of the little tiny pieces that I had before, and I wanted like the name of the company, you know. And so this one said LL May and Company. And so I was going to put that up on the top over the word seeds, and I did put it down. And then after I put that down, I wanted to go over the whole piece like I was doing before and just give it a little bit of a sanding, very, very lightly. And like I said, that's just a personal preference. And at that point, I thought I was done. And then I just kind of kept looking at that word, the May,
company, and it just seemed like it was so small and it was kind of bothering me. So I went through my stuff and I actually found this bigger one that said the same thing, LL May and Company. And I cut it apart so that it would be in pieces, and I decided to go over that little area where it said LL May, and I didn't want to scratch it up with my sandpaper. I was worried about doing that. So I just kind of used like one of my little sanding discs that goes in my little hand sander and a combination of my fingernail and got it off of there without scratching it up. And now I'm going to put that bigger portion that says LL May and Company Seeds. And it just makes sense that way. And that's what I meant by you could use just different wording and different pictures from all your transfers to make endless amounts of different projects. And if you're liking the ones from the seed catalog, I have so many more projects in my mind. I just didn't have the time to do them all in one video. But if you want to see another one from the seeds catalog, just let me know, and on my next video, that's what I'll do. I hope you like this one. It was short and sweet, and I love it.
Well, I wanna take a ride in the wheelbarrow in your mind. Take me all around to the thinking places where you spend your time. Ain't no place I'd rather go. You're a funny little critter and I love you so, man. I wanna take a ride in the wheelbarrow in your mind. I come and sit down with me in a rocking chair. Coffee pot is nice and hot. We can sit in our underwear. Tell me about the dreams you had last week, swimming all around with the fish in the sea. Come sit down with me in a rocking chair.
Sometimes to upcycle your old decor, it doesn't take much. It might just need a spray painting, which was the case with this old rusty, crusty birdcage. It's a mint color, which doesn't go with anything of mine. So I gave it 3 coats of the satin beige by Rust-Oleum 2 times. It came out looking great, but I wanted one that had the bird on the top, and I had a bird that I got from Dollar General for $1, and I painted it white, and I just used some E6000 and glued that baby right to the top of my bird cage.
So next I take this 3x5 frame, and I already like it the way it is. I just want to tone down the color a little. So I'm taking my Debbie's DIY white wax and a chippy brush, and I'm going to go over the whole frame with a pretty good thick coat. Then once I have it covered in the white wax, all I'm going to do is just take a microfiber rag, and I'm just going to go and lightly buff off some of that white wax. This definitely did the trick to tone it down just a little bit and make it a little bit more shabby. I took a piece out of one of my journals that's called God's Whisper. If your life is too noisy, you're drowning out God's voice. And I really like that reminder. I like the look of ripped pages, so I went all the way around that and ripped it, and then I just put it right back in its frame. I styled my bird cage by taking an old vintage key and tying it to some shabby ribbon on the side, and then I also added a couple of flowers, some ivy, and I put my beautiful little quote and picture frame on the top of some old books, and I absolutely love it. You know, sometimes I think I overthink my DIYs. I'm going to keep this one. It has special meaning. If you'll look on that vintage key, it says heart. and then I purposely locked that cage. And this is kind of like a little reminder for me that we allow so much noise to get our attention in our daily lives that we don't hear God's whisper. But if you'll just take the key to your heart and unlock it, it's like you're opening your cage and setting yourself free. I know that's kind of out there, but sometimes I do that, and I have little analogies for my DIYs.
Is that weird? I don't know, but let's move on.
The next one is this pretty little basket that I got from the thrift store. Well, it's a basket, but it's also like a little container, like a little box almost. It's got a lock on it, and I think it's really, really pretty. And it also had handles on it, which I had already taken off. They were basically kind of like thick jute cord, or jute rope, I'm sorry. And so what I'm going to do is give it a couple of coats of my Rust-Oleum white spray paint, and I always use the 2 times Rust-Oleum. But if I'm going to be spray painting a basket, I always go over it with a top coat first, because these baskets tend to soak up that spray paint. But if you put a top coat on it, it's like it gives it a barrier, and it gives something for that spray paint to stick to. So anything that has trouble with spray paint sticking to it, you just put this top coat on it and you're set to go. I'm going to use the Prima Redesign transfer, and these are called Vintage Dream, or this certain one is called Vintage Dream. I absolutely love the flowers in this one. And you know, you can cut them apart. You don't have to use the whole picture the way it is. And I thought at first, you know, it's just going to go right through these holes. It's not going to be seen. And I don't know if I've ever even noticed anybody put transfers on a basket like this. But I was in a little bit of a daring mood. So I thought, well, let's try it. The worst thing that can happen is I lose my transfer. So I went over it, and all you do is lay it down and just use your little scraping tool. And I just really took my time with it. This is in super fast motion, just so I don't bore you guys. But I really just took my time, was slow about it. And a lot of times when you get your transfer stuck on there, you can start to pick it up, and it just like automatically lays down. It's almost like a sticker, but you just have to make sure that it sticks really good. So I put the big flower on the left side, and then on the right side, I put the 2 smaller flowers and going up the top. And once you find the placement where your transfer is going to go, it's not a good idea to try to pick it back up and move it, because parts of it probably will stick, and you are totally going to mess up your transfer. But I got this one flower down on the bottom, and then I put the other one kind of toward the top. Once you get your transfer totally on the object, you use the backing of that same sheet and just burnish it. And that just means rub it around, basically, so it'll stick down really good. And this is what I came up with, and I just used some jute cord for the handles. I hope you like this one. I'm really glad now that I took the chance on trying this. I wanted to jump in for a minute and ask you guys to subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you as part of my family here on YouTube. All you got to do is hit that little red button and you're in. And give me a big thumbs up, because it really helps support my channel out here on YouTube. I'm going to start out with this big size tin can that like a big size that green beans come in. You just take everything off of it, and I spray painted it smoky beige by, you guessed it, Rust-Oleum 2 times. And I'm just putting 2 pieces of wax on the side so it doesn't move. We're going to do a little decoupaging, which is one of my favorite things. You just get a little bit of your Mod Podge on your fingers together, and then you go, like I did there, like pinch the napkin, and it will cause that back side to come off. Now, but most napkins have 2 backings on them, but make sure it's all off of there or it will mess up your decoupage. And I'm just going to rip the part of the napkin off that I want, because I do not like straight edges on anything that I'm doing with decoupage. It doesn't look as good as it does when you have ripped edges. So you just rip off the piece that you want. And if you're afraid of it ripping, do like I just did. I squirted the end of my paintbrush and you dab it where you want it to be ripped, and it creates just a little bit of wetness, and it's so much easier to rip. Now, I sped this up for the sake of time, but you just go real slow. You put your Mod Podge down in sections and just very gently lay it down. You don't want to touch it with your hands after it's laid down. I mean, if you need to move stuff around just a little bit, you can, but be very careful because the napkins are so thin, they're going to, mess up on you if you're not careful. Now, your best friend is your saran wrap. I always say that. So I put it down, and you see I put my saran wrap over the front of this. I got enough to cover the whole scene there, and I just kind of used my fingers to kind of push the image down into the object and to pull. And when I pulled, that napkin went right into all those little ridges, and it turned out without a single wrinkle. And if you need to touch it, use your saran wrap to do so and set it aside and let it dry. Now I'm going to do a couple of projects together because it creates a vignette. And here I'm going to do a candle. I actually do two, but I'm just going to show you one for the sake of time. I've got my wet paintbrush and I'm going down through the side of this, and I just kind of flipped it off and see the whole, it's all like jagged, not jagged, I don't know the word, but I didn't, it's not a straight edge. It's ripped. Okay, I'm using antique Mod Podge, but there was really no difference in this Mod Podge than others, and Plaid sent it to me for free. Thank you, Plaid. So I'm going to try it out. It's just kind of a more antique-y color, I guess you could say, but I didn't notice anything else different. So here I'm putting my Mod Podge down in sections. I want my bird's face, or the front of the bird, to be the very center of that candle. So I lay it down, and I just once I lay it down, I just kind of let it fall as it may. And I start off in the middle, and I go down and up to try to get that image to fall down naturally, and that's where it's going to stick. I hope that kind of makes sense. And then, of course, I grab my handy-dandy saran wrap, and I lay it on the top of it, and then I use my fingers to put this exactly the way that I want it. And I'm so sorry that my doggone hair bow keeps getting in the way, but I'm using this new arm that goes over my head, and I thought it was totally over my head. But you're getting a good view of my Minnie Mouse hair bow. It's not really. It just looks like something she would wear. And so anyways, you just make sure that you use your fingers on top of that saran wrap. And hey, even if you do get a wrinkle, you can almost like iron it out with your fingers. The heat from your fingers on top of that saran wrap, run it back and forth like you're ironing that wrinkle out. And I promise you, for the most part, the wrinkle will come out. But guys, if you take your time and you do your saran wrap and you just slow down and get you some practice, hey, you will get this. It's not difficult. It's not a difficult concept, but it takes a lot of patience and practice, and that's something that most of us lack, especially me. It took me forever to understand that saran wrap is my best friend. And if you have edges that are sticking up that need to come off like this here, just use sandpaper or like this little wedge like I am, and you do it away from yourself and it comes off perfect. Okay, next I've got these two candlesticks. I got these at a thrift store, y'all, for $2 a piece because the lady didn't know how expensive these were. And I kept telling her, but she wouldn't listen. They are 52 bucks a piece, and they still have the things on the bottom. These are the heaviest, chunkiest, most beautiful candlesticks. And I've had them for a while, which is why I couldn't bring myself to paint them. But today I did. I used my white Rust-Oleum, and I gave it 2 coats, and then I did the clear coat. And then I'm just using my sanding sponge and very, very lightly going over it because I was even afraid to sand them. Like, these are my favorite candlesticks. I will not sell these in my booth. They stay with me, absolutely. And you can even use your fingernail to make a little scratch if you want to in the paint. Don't do it in the candlestick, just lightly in the paint, and it makes a larger spot and it looks good. And the next thing in my vignette is this little ordeal that I made. It's a riser. Okay, if you guys can help not looking at my chickens because they are so gorgeous. But anyways, I made this riser. These are just 2 of those little rounds that you get from Walmart for 97 cents, and I took the farmhouse beads and put it in the middle of them, and of course I painted it with my antique wax. And on the bottom is this candlestick actually, and it's a reddy brown color that I do not like. Look at my babies. It's so hard not to love them. See, I had to draw a little heart. I know I'm weird, right? So I painted that white, and this is everything together, and I hope you like it. I think it's glorious.
What's it like to be the one that he comes to when he wants to dance? And I wonder what's that like?
Vintage French books. Now, these aren't the cutesy little books that all of us DIYers have made a million times over that have the words. These look like old vintage books where the spines are coming undone, and I just think they're beautiful, and they have a French shabby vibe to them. So here I'm just making a gray color. I'm using white and black to get my gray, and then I'm going to add the light blue Glacier from Home Decor to get a blue color. Now that's going to be the main color of our books, but we're going to have several different colors mixed in and mingled in with that.
So I'm going to take my books, and I want the spine completely covered in the light blue color, but the rest of it you do just almost like a very thick distressing. Now, if you have any other color besides a blue, dark blue or light blue, you need to cover it up totally. So you see what I'm doing here, it's just a very thick distressing motion. And then I'm going to go over the pages also. If you have any other color besides blue and white, you want to cover it up completely, just like this red here. You want to make sure you've got it completely covered, and you're going to go down the spine of the book too, or I'm sorry, the pages of the book.
You had me at a low, 'cause where you go is where I go.
Now on the spines, we are going to make it look old and vintage. And I use DOS brand clay, D-A-S. It's in my Amazon store if you want some. And all you're going to do is warm it up in your hands. And then you're going to go over it, and you're going to cover the whole spine up with this. And you don't want it to be even. You want it to be kind of... it's easier for you just to watch what I'm doing than me to explain, because it may not make sense unless you see what I'm doing here. You can use a little spatula if you need to kind of smooth it over, but you want it to be bumpy and rough looking, because when you're finished, it's going to look like old ripped spine from a book. And if you need to use just a little bit of water so you can smooth your clay, that's perfectly fine. You just do what you need to do. And I must say, I think it looks better when I covered the whole spine up, because on one of the books I didn't totally cover it up, and the one where it's covered all the way does look better. This is the one that I completely covered, and I have it sped up for the sake of time, but you're going to leave it alone. I usually do overnight so that it can totally dry. Then you're going to take a darker shade of blue, which I picked Nantucket blue, and I just put a dash of blue in it, which it really didn't make that much of a difference. And you're just going to kind of do a distressing motion all over that area that you had distressed with the lighter color. And then you're just going to put dabs of it on the spine, especially in the areas where there is no clay. You want that darker color. I actually think that the one that had the whole spine covered with the clay turned out so much better. So that's just my main suggestion, is to go ahead and cover that whole spine with the clay. You don't want it level. You want it kind of, so it'll look like a shabby old book. So you just go over everything with that dark blue color, and you're just lightly distressing kind of here and there all over that book. Then when all that's dry, you're going to take your lighter color of blue again and just lightly go over everything. Now you pretty much want that whole spine to be covered in the blue, the light blue mostly. And it's okay to have a couple of peaks of that white coming through. That's fine. I saw this off of Flea Market Rescue, and I just thought it was beautiful, and I've been doing it in my booth, and these have been selling like hotcakes. They sell more than the books that have the little words on the side. After I got all of my blue on and I was totally satisfied with it, I took a little bit of the antiquing wax and I just went over it very lightly. I even rubbed it in the spine with my finger in just small areas. I wanted to show you right here on the pages, look how pretty that is when you take the light blue with the dark blue and then go back over it with the light blue. It just looks like an old vintage book where the spines are just falling apart. And the lady from Flea Market Rescue did a much better job than me. But these do sell very well in the booth. And so what I did right here was show my head forever. Sorry. And I'm just basically going to take a thick piece of jute twine, wrap these books together, and then I had made some beautiful little tags for my booth, because that way I like to put tags on all of my things that I sell at my booth, because it's just an extra sweet little gift for the person to tell them thank you for purchasing from me. And this is how it turned out. My first DIY is going to be this beautiful wall clock that I thrifted. I think it's so pretty. And when I first started on it, I wanted to really accentuate this beautiful detail that's around it. I think that is so lovely. I think I only paid like $1.99 for this thing. So I just grabbed it and I took all the pieces apart. A lot of times, if I find a beautiful clock that's round, I don't necessarily even use it for a clock. I thought that this one would make a beautiful wall decor, but I always keep all those pieces just in case I need it when I do happen to be putting a clock together. And honey, I'm telling you, this thing was a mess to try to get the front off of it. I don't know what was going on. It was some kind of hard plastic, and whenever I put the heat to it, it like started curling up on me. And I was going to save it until it did that. And I was like, yeah, you got to go, baby girl. So I just pulled it off. I used that heat to loosen up that glue on the back of it and popped her right off there. I have this gorgeous picture of these pretty little birds, and it's on rice paper. All I do is use rice paper and print the picture off on my regular printer, and I use the front of that little clock to know exactly how big I needed to cut this. And if I'm going to decoupage, which is what I'm going to do with this rice paper, I always rip my edges because you don't want any straight edges when you're decoupaging anything because it just looks more natural this way and it makes it so pretty. Then I took my little block of wax. You can use just a cheap old Dollar Tree candle. It does not matter. And you go around because this is a much easier way, I think, to distress. Whenever you put this wax on anything, whatever it hits, it's not going to hold the paint. So at the end, you just kind of scrape it off and you naturally have a beautiful way of distressing something. I pulled out my Debbie's DIY paint, and this green color is called Apothecary. It is one of my favorite colors. It is beautiful and breathtaking, and this paint is amazing. I gave it 2 full coats of the color Apothecary. I took the Waverly color called Ivory, and we're just going to hit the middle of this clock because a very little portion of my picture is going to show, and I want it to be the exact same color of the background of that little birdie picture that I'm going to decoupage on there. Now, if you like to decoupage and you haven't used rice paper, it's a game changer. Rice paper is so much easier to use than napkins because it's a little bit thicker and hardier, and it doesn't wrinkle and make all that mess that sometimes you get with napkins. Now, all I did was put down a little bit of Mod Podge and slap that picture right down. I always start from the center and kind of go out just to make sure I don't have any, bubbles or crinkles in my paper. Then I just took a razor knife and kind of cut around the edges to make sure that I had a good proper edge and that there wasn't anything sticking up or looking crazy. And I got some little fairy lights that I get off of Amazon. You get about, 15 packs in there, and there's 20 little lights on each string. And they're very inexpensive.
They're in my Amazon store in case you want any of these.
I think they're beautiful, and I love to use them in a lot of my different DIYs. Now, there was a little hole that's right there in the top that was perfect to slide that wire through there. And I just glued the little battery pack to the back of it, pulled it through, and I wound it around about 2 times so that it would go around my picture very nicely. And the good thing about these little fairy lights, if you need to put a little dot of glue to hold them, it's not going to fry that wire and mess up your whole lights. So I just put a couple of little dabs of glue, and that was plenty enough to hold it because it's a wire, so it doesn't need much to hold it. And after I put the little lights in, I still felt like it was needing something. So I grabbed some of this little Spanish moss. It just came from the Dollar Tree. And I put a little bit at the bottom to kind of make it look like a little birdie nest. And that kind of just gave it that little sweet touch that I thought that it was needing. If there's any that's sticking out and looks crazy, I just kind of trim them off with the little scissors there. Then I simply put a little dab of glue on the back and put my battery pack right there. That way you can flip it on and off with no problem. And I put my mirror back in, and let me tell y'all what I did. I started putting everything back together, and I had to use my screwdriver to put my little screws back in to hold the mirror. Well, Kathy cracked the mirror, and I was like, way to go, big girl. But I wasn't about to stop with this DIY because I thought it was beautiful. And you know what? A lot of people don't even like mirrors or, like glass or anything in their stuff. So I thought, hey, leave it out. It's still going to look good. And I just used a little wet baby wipe to go around and kind of distress. Now, it made that darker color underneath, which if you remember, it was black and kind of a coppery color. It made it pop right out and go, look at me. Here I am. I'm beautiful. Then I had to hit it with my Debbie's DIY white wax. If there's one product that I cannot live without, it's this product. And it seals in that paint, makes it kind of calm down the color a little bit, if you will. It kind of mutes it, and it gives it this beautiful cottage chic kind of vibe. It's just beautiful. And then I just wiped off the excess with the rag. Now, if you've been around my channel for a while, you know me, I can't stop once I get going on a DIY. So I thought, hey, what if I add one of these little solar wood flowers? I liked that ivory color because I felt that it was just muted enough to make everything perfect. And then I still wanted to add something. So I took some little pearls and I just put 3 on the 4 different corners. And don't you know, I didn't even record that part. I thought I did. But here's what it looked like when the pearls was on there. I hope you guys like this one. I absolutely am mad about it. When I'm showing you guys my DIYs and staging them, I always like to put a little old vintage picture. That's me when I graduated nursing school 20 years ago, and man, how time flies. And I'm so into anything vintage, so I love to stick little vintagey whatnots in my pictures whenever I'm taking it for you guys. I hope y'all enjoy this one. I don't know which way I like it better. It's beautiful with the lights on or with the lights off. But let's just jump right on in to DIY number 2. This one is an old pickle jar that I had upcycled a while back ago. I didn't really like it. So we're going to use some Dixie Belle Slick Stick. Now, this is the first time I've ever started using it. It is specifically for glass and things that are hard to paint, like glass, metal, that kind of thing. And it pretty much does what it says. It's a slick stick. Anything that's slick, it helps that paint stick. You know what I'm saying? And I put just 1 coat on this and on the top. And guys, the paint went on like a dream. So this slick stick is another one of my favorite products. Then I put a little bit of baking soda and I put a little bit of paint. And the paint that I'm using is home decor color called Oatmeal. I kind of do half and half. So if I do 1 teaspoon of the baking soda, I'm going to do 1 teaspoon of the paint. Now, it's just to thicken that paint up a little bit. It kind of makes the jar or whatever you're putting it on look a little like concretey, you know. And here's another little tip, guys, if y'all didn't know. Take Vaseline, just a little bit of Vaseline, and go around the tops of your paint jars whenever you're finished with them, because you ever have where paint gets all like cracky and flaky. You won't do it with that Vaseline. I'm just telling you, it's a good little move, and somebody taught it to me, and so I love to teach it to you guys and help y'all out. So I'm just going to stir this up real good. And when I get it good and stirred up, I want the consistency of like a thick pancake batter. It's not going to run off of my brush whenever I hold it up. Now, my first coat that I put on is just to get the paint on. It's nothing special. Basically, you just slap that first coat on there. But on my second coat, after that first coat is totally dried, I do another coat, and I use this sponge dabber, I guess is what you call it. It's just a sponge, but I'm just pretty much dabbing that on there. And that kind of is what gives it that concretey look, you know, that look that we like on all of our jars. Or some of us do. I mean, it's just your personal preference, but I think it's really pretty. Plus, when the paint's a little bit thicker like that, you can't see any kind of lines or imperfections. So I let that second coat dry, and look at this beautiful piece of rice paper that my friend Teresa sent me. Now, Teresa sells napkins and rice paper and that kind of stuff, and I'm going to leave her link in the description down below because she has good prices and some beautiful stuff. Now, remember I told you that I like to rip the edges to make it look natural? The easiest way to do that is to wet them. So I wet the end of a little paintbrush, and then I use my fingers and very softly and carefully rip around the image that I'm needing for my decoupage. Now I'm going to take this pretty girl and I am going to put her on this jug. A jug. Man, you can tell I'm from Tennessee. It's a jar. So I put down a little bit of Mod Podge, and like I said, the rice paper, it works like a dream. It's so easy. I just do a little bit up top and then stuck her down, and then I put a little bit at the bottom. And you always want to make sure to get those edges sealed really well with that Mod Podge. That way it won't never come up. And I still do use Saran wrap if I get wrinkles, but you very seldom get many wrinkles when you use the rice paper. Now up at the top of this jar, since it was curved the way it was, I cut 3 just straight cuts in it, and it makes it a little bit easier to lay it down. And I did use my Saran wrap up there too, because some areas are a little bit more tricky, you know, but you don't want no wrinkles. And then over here at the side, I just stuck another little rose kind of off to the side so it would look like the picture's going all the way around the jug. The jug. And on the front, I had 2 small little butterflies that was on this picture, and I just stuck those in front of her. Now, I gave the lid 2 coats of Ballet Slipper is the color. It's that pretty muted pink color by Waverly. And I did put that slick stick on that top of that jar too, just because, you know, it's a slick surface and it don't usually hold paint so well. Then I had to grab my Debbie's DIY white wax, y'all. I've had this jar forever. And guys, I do so many DIYs, and I'm not even halfway through this jar. I'm not kidding you. It is a little bit more expensive. I want to say it's about 15 bucks for the jar, but it lasts you forever. So you just rub it on and you rub it back off to whatever preference, how much you want on there. And it just mutes down that color a little bit and gives it a little vintagey vibe. I wrapped some jute twine around the top of it, and I had to get all the little fuzzies off, so I used a lighter to do that, and it just burns them off perfectly. And then the last thing I done was I took some of this ribbon, I guess you would call it ribbon. I got it at the Dollar Tree, and it's almost like, I really don't even know what you would call this stuff, but I mean, you can see it. I really don't even know what you would call it, but I just kind of cut it up because I felt like the jar needed something else. And so I just ended up like fooling with it for a little while, and I finally settled on kind of tying it in a very loose, tacky kind of, you know, like a shabby chic type bow. I found this little flower petal with the pearl in the middle somewhere. I don't know where it came from. And so I like to add a little 3D effect to my stuff. So I stuck it kind of on the side where it looks like it's in her hair with the rest of the flowers. And then I did use a very light sandpaper to go over it and kind of scratch it up and give it that vintagey look. I hope you like it.
Yesterday I lost the battle, trying at all costs, oh, to keep you, baby. Oh, to keep you, baby. Now I hurt so bad.
This is a little planter that I got, little watering can that I got from my thrift store for $1. Now it's that metal that's kind of hard to paint, so I gave it that slick stick also. And then I just painted it with the exact same mixture of the baking soda and the oatmeal colored paint that I had mixed up before. I had it sitting around, so I figured I might as well. And I only gave it 2 coats of this, and I did the exact same thing. I daubed it on. Now on this one, since it was a little bit harder to paint, I didn't just swipe on that first coat of paint like I did with the jar. I started right away with that daubing motion, and I did that 2 times. And now I'm going to use some IOD transfers. Now these are called Redoubt 2. And my friend Lori over at Milton's Daughter sent me this, and I thank you so much, Lori. This is beautiful. And guys, the thing about the IOD transfers is you don't have to use that whole page. You can use little bits and pieces of it or just the words, and it makes any project beautiful. Now, I'm going to leave Lori's link down in the description box below. Her store is called Milton's Daughter. That's where I get anything
IOD from. And she's awesome. She's quick to get it to you, and you will not be disappointed. And let me tell you what else. She gives my subscribers 10% off your IOD products. So y'all make sure that you go see Miss Lori down at Milton's Daughter and let her know that Crafty Kathy sent you her way. So I finally found the one that I wanted. All I needed was a little piece, and these are so easy to use. All you do is just lay it on whatever surface you're going to put it on, and then they send you a little tool, and you just have to scratch it with that little tool, and it comes right off, almost like a sticker, except for it's so beautiful, guys. Like I'm telling you, it will make any DIY just pop. And a lot of times, to be honest, I do use that tool, but I kind of prefer my fingernail a lot of times. It's just easier to get it off. And then when you get the image off, you burnish it. And burnish just means where you take that little clear film that it comes on and rub it on the top of it to get it to make sure it's sticking real good. Now, I picked this word, and it's from a different part of the book. Like I said, you can use bits and pieces, and I just put this down on the bottom. It's a French word, so don't ask me what it is, because us Tennessee guys, we don't speak French. Unless you're talking about French fries now. That's another story. But anyways, I put another little rose on the back, and it's from a totally different part of the book. And from another book called Brocante, I had this beautiful little butterfly, and I thought it went perfect with this watering can, so I put it on kind of on the side there. I added another little rose to the side, and then going up the spout, I put like another little phrase that went right along with the other French words that I put on there. Then I used my Waverly ink, which is their black colored chalk paint, and I went all the way around the rims of this little watering can to kind of give it like an enamel look. But I used my finger. It's my favorite form of distressing. You know, we always joke about that. Instead of a paintbrush, a lot of times I use my finger because it just distresses everything perfectly. So I went around all the edges with my finger, and I think that turned out so pretty. And that's all I did to this one because it didn't need anything else. And I hope you like this one. I think it's just cute as can be.
What's it like to be the one that he turns to when he's out of answers? What's it like to be the one that he comes to when he wants to dance?
I bought this little basket from the thrift store, and I decided to paint it. So I taped off the bottom third part of it. And the upper part, I painted it with the color called Ivory Bisque, which is just an ivory color. And then the bottom, it was called Coastal Sage. And y'all know I've got that little Etsy store called Kathy's Crafty Boutique, where I have all that sublimation prints that are in there. And I decided to do a little sublimation. It's been a while since we've been doing our sublimation, and y'all know how I love it. So I printed these two beautiful roses out on this sublimated paper, and all I'm going to do is just cut it out here. I'm actually going to put it on this runner that came from the Dollar Tree because it's 100% polyester, and to do sublimation, you get a better result if you use at least 70% polyester. So all I have to do is lay my print down and put my wax paper down over top of it, and then my Cricut hot press for 60 seconds on 385. Now don't forget, come visit my shop if you guys need anything that's sublimated. I have beautiful prints, and like I said, it's been a while since we've talked about the sublimation, but I absolutely love the way it always turns out. And look at this. Voila! So I just cut my little print out, and I'm going to put it right in the middle of my basket. All I do is use a little small dab of hot glue on the corners to hold it down. And I think this turned out beautiful, guys. After I got it glued down, I did use a little bit of the Debbie's DIY white wax. mostly on that darker part on the bottom, that coastal sage. It's kind of an apothecary color. It almost came out looking like that apothecary. That's absolutely all I had to do to this, and I love the way that it turned out. This will sell very fast because the baskets are always a fast seller, and you can always find a ton of them at the thrift store.
Give me love, give me all your love.
So this window actually came from a really old farmhouse, and it was torn down years ago. It is super dirty. I have an exquisite idea of what I want to do with it. It's a 27 inch by 27 inches, and I wanted to keep that natural beauty and chippiness that the paint has. I didn't want to touch it because I think that things that set out like that are naturally beautiful. And so the first step is to get this baby cleaned up. The front of it here had a little bit of paint left on it, but the back is absolutely bare. It's just old, gorgeous wood, and I want to preserve that. So we're going to use some polyacrylic, and I'm going to give it 2 coats, and you totally let them dry in between each coat. And of course, I'm just going on the wood part. I'm not going on that window part. When I put my polyacrylic on, I like to go in long, even strokes. That way, it doesn't have kind of like, you can't see it really when it dries, but you don't want it to be streaky and all funny looking. So I kind of try to go in one long motion up and down each side. And it really doesn't take much of this at all. And like I said, you get it on the front and the sides there of that window, and then you just let it dry in between coats, and it will turn out beautiful. The friend of ours that I got this window from grew up in this house, so it has a lot of history, and I try to be very careful and just respect that. So I did give the back and the front 2 coats of that polyacrylic because you know I wanted to seal the front too, that paint that's on there, so it doesn't chip anymore. We're going to use this Home Decor sheepskin color paint. It's kind of an ivory color. And what I'm going to do is on the back side of my window, I am going to actually paint the glass. And no, I'm not crazy. I have a vision in my mind, and it's going to be beautiful, guys. So let's paint this glass with 2 coats. When I put my paint on each window pane, I try to do the same thing. I try to go in long, even strokes so there won't be any kind of streakiness or anything like that. But as you know, chalk paint's pretty thick, so it goes on really well. And I'm using a flat brush that you use for kind of bigger projects anyways. And it's one of my favorite types of brushes to use. The bristles just flow with this chalk paint, and it was very easy to paint it.
Guys, you know,
I cleaned this thing for such a long time, but I had to do it in a gentle way because I actually wanted some of that natural dirt to stay on there. Do you see the side of that window? Not necessarily the dirt, but just the wear and tear that's on that window. To me, like I said, I think that's beautiful, and I wanted to keep that and preserve it. So let's go to our next step, and this would be after I have the 2 coats on and totally dry. I'm going to use the IOD transfers called Flora Paracensis. I think I didn't butcher that word too bad, but I love to use transfers on things like old windows like this, especially the ones that look vintage anyway, because it just goes with the whole beauty of the piece. And like I said, I love to respect these older pieces and take care of them and reuse them. Why not? So I laid everything out the way that I wanted it. And what you do is you take that white backing off of your transfer and you lay it down exactly where you want it. Now, a lot of people tape theirs down, but I don't do that because I like to walk on the wild side, I guess. I really don't know. So I cut it as close as I could to this side, because as you see, those words are so big, we're going to have to go on two different sides. So I cut it as close as I could, and I laid it down, and now the fun part comes. We're going to start scratching away to get it to stick to that mirror. This plastic tool comes in every one of these transfer packs that you purchase, and what you do is you lay it down, and I hold it with one hand, and then you just kind of scratch it. That's kind of the best way I can describe it. You can also use your little Cricut tool here. You can use a credit card. And at first, I thought, man, this is kind of tough. But you have to get the rhythm of what you're doing. And I hope this makes sense. When you're trying to put one of these transfers down, you want it to stick. So a lot of times, an easier way to do it is to kind of hold it up as if you're pulling it off while you're scratching it, and it helps it to stick better. I don't really know how to explain that, but I heard the two ladies that own the company, the IOD, they call it getting like a wave underneath it. And it does kind of feel like that because you're kind of holding up the paper and you're scratching at the same time, and you feel it releasing. So I hope that helps on people that are going to try some transfers. And I want you to look how gorgeous this is when you pull it up. So then we went to the second side and did the same thing. And I have to be honest and tell you that when you are doing these transfers, like I said, the first time that you're doing them, it seems like it's a little tough and like you're just scraping forever. But once you get the rhythm, it really goes fast. So the rest of this piece went a lot quicker for me. This is the bottom part of the rose that I put down. And every piece that comes with IOD has the whole shebang to it. You know what I mean? Even if the stems have to come on another page, they put them there. And I kind of wrestled at first with if I was going to stop the transfer at the bottom, or if I was just going to try to run it over those little middle parts there, you know, like keep the stem going. And I thought, I think I'm going to keep the stem going because it just kind of looks more natural to me, and I like the way that it looks. So I want to show you this first flower when I pull it off. I stopped that stem about halfway down because I wanted to put another big floral arrangement underneath it, and it was going to cover up that stem anyway. And that's the beauty of these types of transfers, is you can use just little pieces here and there, piece it together however you need to make it look right. I don't know if you're like me, my friend, but I am so in love with peonies. They are my favorite flower ever. They're just so beautiful and Victorian, and they just look so old-fashioned to me and just so beautiful. There's just something so elegant but delicate about them. Do you know what I'm saying? They're just a beautiful flower. So I'm not going to make you watch this whole thing. I just wanted to show you how you kind of put these on, and then we're going to go to the fun part. Once I got all of my bigger floral pieces put on there, I had a few smaller pieces that I wanted to use too. And like I said, you don't even have to use all of them. Everything still looks good, you know, if you just want to piece it together. So I took a few of these smaller ones, and I'm just going to add them kind of to the middle just to add a little bit of contrast, because I think these art pieces like this look good when there's a higher, you know, point and a lower point. It just kind of ties it all together. I hope you guys had a great weekend this week. You know, the weather is starting to warm up a little bit, and I totally have spring fever. I know it's only, you know, February, but I really have spring fever so bad, and I know that most everybody else does too. We get sick and tired of this old cold. And look at these beautiful birds. This came from a totally different set. Now, this came from a set called Brocante, and I'm just going to place a few birds on here. I thought that maybe 4 birds would be perfect. And look, you can even cut off pieces that go together like this. As you see, these 6 little birds are kind of a scene together. Well, I'm just going to cut 4 of them off and put them up on the side. I felt like it needed something up there at the top.
And my videos are going to be coming out at different times this month. I want y'all to be watching that community tab because on the 11th and the 18th of February, those are both Fridays, I'm going to be doing collabs those days, and I want you to watch my video, of course. And then I'm going to actually start putting my videos out on Thursdays because I've had a lot of requests of people, like 70% of y'all said when I did the poll that you wanted Thursdays. So let's start doing, after this one, we're going to start doing Thursdays. Okay, so every Thursday is going to be our regular video, and except for on the 11th and the 18th. Now, here is where I decided to add another little bird because I wanted to add a little touch of blue in there just for a little contrast. I think the different colors kind of brings the eye right to the center of the piece. And that's absolutely all that I did to this piece. I want you guys to let me know what you think about it. I was going to sell this in one of my booths, but I thought, nope, it's going on my wall in my home. So let me know what y'all think about this one.
I'm looking for that vintage fling, but all complexions that I adore. So hard to find, these seem impossible to score. So I dream on to someday find that vintage love. I kept on looking, but everyone's such a bore. And out of a sudden,
So let's go to DIY number 2. At the thrift store, I found this beautiful candle holder, and this one is going to go in one of my booths. So the first thing I have to do is clean it up. But I had the most awesome idea to bring this up to a high-end candle holder, and I wanted to use the same colors that was in that picture that we just did. So the first thing we're going to do is clean it up real good with some Windex. I bought this disc at Hobby Lobby, and it's got like moss on the top of it, and it's a styrofoam disc, and it's round, and it is for florals. So what I'm going to do is cut a slit halfway through it, because you know that candle holder had like a long stem, and we've got to kind of get it in there underneath that glass. I had to use a combination of scissors and tin snips to get the hole big enough, or the slit big enough, but I finally got it up under there. And then that moss was kind of coming off in a few spots on my little disc. So what I did was just glued that together. And then I've got all these different florals in this bucket, and they're all kind of springy looking. But remember, I told you I thought I had some florals that matched that picture, and looky here, I sure do. I've got some beautiful peonies, and I'm like, yep, that's what I'm going to use. I wanted that peachy color, and I also wanted a cream color, so everything would kind of go together. So I came up with some peonies, some roses, some azaleas. It was a little bit of a mix of everything. And what you do is you just basically just start sticking everything in, and you kind of got to, you know, just place it where you think it's going to look good, and try to place it in an even way. Like if you're going to put a peony on one side, it's probably best to put one in the exact spot on the opposite side. At this point, I didn't realize I had another peony, but I found it later. So the azaleas is what I had the most of, and as you see, when I put one on one side, I stick one right on the other side, and then I just added my couple of little roses, and then later when I was going over to set it where I take my pictures for you guys is when I found my other peonies. So I just added those peonies in on top of what I already had. And I think that every floral piece looks good with some type of greenery. So these are actually just leaves that are like single leaves that I added in behind some of the flowers to make it look like they're stems. And then they're actually like 2 or 3 different types of greenery. And I think that it looks good when you add different greenery like that, because it's like it brings a little bit of contrast to your piece, if that makes any sense. So instead of just using the same one the whole time in greenery, you can use a couple of different ones and nobody ever knows the difference, and it looks better to me. I got everything added in there, and I was going to use this peony, but the colors just didn't look right to me. Now, I used a couple of stems that comes from the Dollar Tree, and it's one of their spring stems that looks like little yellow berries, and I think it's beautiful. And then I just put the glass back on, and I had a candle that I put in there, and here she is. When I found those other peonies, this thing looked really, really full and beautiful and just gorgeous. I'm going to put this piece in my booth for $18. Before we go into DIY number 3, I wanted to remind you, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, we would love to have you a part of it. Hit that little red button that's on the bottom right corner that has my face on it, or that red subscribe button, and that's all you have to do. It's totally free. And don't forget to give me a thumbs up for this video because it really helps support my channel on YouTube. Now let's get into number 3. We're going to make a gorgeous couch pillow with the Easter Bunny on it. Now, I've got these pillowcases that I get at Hobby Lobby, and they're $4.99 originally, but usually you can get them for half off, which is just $2.50, and they're made out of 100% cotton. And I do sublimation. You know, I have that sublimation machine. These are really super easy to make. I have the print here at my house, and so what I do, the first thing I do is lay down my little pad, and I'm just going to use the iron itself and try to iron out the wrinkles in this pillowcase. Then I take my Cricut pad and I stick it right in the middle of that pillowcase. Now, the first time I had printed it wrong because we have to have it mirror imaged. So you lay it down, and doggone it, I forgot to put my heat-resistant tape on it, but thank God it turned out okay. I made sure it was square in the middle. Then you put your wax paper down, and all you do is follow the directions, which is 400 degrees for 60 seconds, and you layer on there for 60 seconds. And then you take off your Cricut press, and when you hold it up, it just sublimates onto the fabric, and it's gorgeous. Look how pretty this is. And this never fades. It never messes up. It's just beautiful. Then you also have to flip your pillowcase over and do the exact same thing, and the color comes out just a little bit more vibrant when you do that. It's so exciting when you lift that iron up and you have a beautiful pillowcase. Now, in case you're interested in this and you have a press, I sell the sublimated prints for $5 a piece, and I also sell the pillowcase already made for $15. If you're interested by any chance, just leave a comment and I'll get back to you. It's always a big seller in my booth. So let's go into our last DIY. I needed some Easter decor in my booth, so I ran to the Dollar Tree and I got a couple of these gold eggs. And I also got some of these 3-inch peat pots, and they come from Walmart. They were like 97 cents or 86 cents for 12 of them. So I'm going to take 3 of those, and we're going to decorate them gorgeous so we can put these in the booth. I keep chalk paint and baking soda already mixed up, and I had the color called Bavarian, which is kind of a yellowy ivory, I guess you could say. And I just brushed over it, just distressing. I don't want to paint these pots. I just want to distress them and make them look old. And then I went to Waverly Plaster because I wasn't really happy with that yellowy color by itself. When you use 2 different colors, it just brings a lot of depth and character to your piece. I'm going to do this the exact same way and just distress every one of these pots. Now, I'm just going over this very, very lightly because I like that natural brown color of that pot to show through.
And I made sure to go back and get the rims on every single one of them. Now I've got a piece of styrofoam and I'm going to stick each of these eggs on a skewer. And I'm going to use that paint that was already mixed up with baking soda. And all I did was use 1 part chalk paint to 1 part baking soda. And I made that sheepskin color, a blue color, and a green color because to me that's kind of springy colors. And I think they're gorgeous. And I'm using a lot of blue this Easter, this spring, I've noticed. I'm really into the blue color. So anyways, I go through and I just put 1 coat on each of these because with that baking soda and chalk paint being so thick, I didn't really need to use any more. It covered it up perfectly. And then I just used that little piece of styrofoam or that floral foam so I could stick my eggs in while they're on those skewers and they just dry without any problem. So I ended up just doing 6 eggs for this quick project. Is it just me or is this video going really fast today? Don't forget to stick around for the bloopers because we got Bobby, Joe, and Shabby, and you know they want to see you guys. And just in case you missed it in the first part, we're going to start doing our video on Thursdays instead of Sundays, except for on the 11th and the 18th, which are Fridays, and those are 2 days I have collabs. But all that's going to be on the community tab, so just watch your community tabs. Now, my peat pots turned out beautiful, and I want to use some of these transfers that come from the Dollar Tree that say spring on them, and I love the part that has tiptoe through the tulips at the top and a beautiful white rose. Now comes the fun part. We're going to use our clay and we are going to use our crockery stamps from IOD and we're going to make molds to go on the front of 2 of the pots. So what you do is get a little bit of the clay, get it warmed up in your hand, and I didn't have my roller, so I used my little brayer thing. It works the same, and I just kind of rolled it out, and then I pressed it on the stamp that I wanted, and when you pull it off, you have all the words on there. So then I made sure it's going to fit on my pot, and then I'm going to go ahead and make my second one. And then I just use my Star Bond glue on the back because that will stick anything together, and we're going to put that on the front of our pot. Now you do have to put it on whatever you're wanting to attach it to before it dries because when this clay dries, it's not going anywhere and it's going to be formed already. So that's all I did to these to attach them to the pots. And then I started using that Bavarian colored chalk paint. And I didn't really care for that color too much. And I was doing it in a distressing type motion. I didn't want to paint that whole front. I just wanted to distress it. So then I used my mineral chalk paint from Waverly. And that's the color that I was looking for. It's almost the color of the pot, just a little bit more of a gray color. And I wanted it to be very subtle and just look like an old pot. And then I just used my dryer to dry all of that color that I had just put on the pots. I'm going to use this peachy color of paint that I have, and this is the type of paint that you use when you're doing those silk screen transfers like the chalk couture, you know, where you just like, it's a paste. I'm just going to use that because it's the only thing I had in that peachy color, and I wanted this whole vignette to match. And so what I did was just very lightly went over that mineral color with this beautiful peach color. And oh, it just turned out gorgeous. Very subtle, but very pretty. My eggs turned out beautiful and had the perfect consistency. So what I did was laid them back in the little egg crates and took some of the Spanish moss and kind of went in between those eggs to make it look like they were just beautiful little, I don't know, little eggs in a basket. And then I took my Spanish moss and also filled up the little peat pots with it. I took some of that DIY wax, it's white wax, and I'm going to put that on each and every one of my eggs. And all you do is just brush a little bit of it on and then wipe it, most of it off with your napkin, and what it does is turn out just looking old and vintagey. It's just really pretty. And I also put another transfer on a few of the eggs. There's just something about the way that white wax looks up against that green and that blue. It just makes it look so old and vintagey and just so pretty. And it just all went together perfectly. And I also had another 6 eggs that were wooden eggs. And also I have a few from last year where I took old song hymnals, ripped them into small pieces, and then you Mod Podge it on the egg, and it's really pretty. I got this beautiful washi tape last week off of Amazon, and it's linked in my Amazon store in case you want any. It's got beautiful flowers and just really pretty designs on it. And I took a few pieces of one of the ones that I liked that had like flowers on it, postcards, that kind of thing. And I'm just going to use this tape and put it in 2 places on the front of one of the pots. That stuff is really easy to use, and oh my goodness, it turns everything beautiful. Now to put the flower pots together. This is what the one looks like that I told you has the song hymnal on it. I'm going to place that one and a wooden one in one of them. And then also I made up another little nest, I guess you could call it, with the Spanish moss and the little eggs that have the songs on them and the wooden ones together. I even ran some of the washi tape on the front of one of the little egg cartons. Then I just tied a ribbon on the top with this little ticking ribbon that comes from the Dollar Tree. I absolutely love this ribbon, but I can't find it anymore at my Dollar Tree. And to finish it off, I got these little birds off of Amazon the other day, and they are the cutest things. They're all different colors, and they are in my Amazon store in case you guys want some. They're under must-haves in the category. So I just took them and put a little bit of DIY wax on them to kind of knock them down because they are kind of bright colored. I put one of the little birds sitting on the side of one of the pots, and then I put another little bird right in the center of that ribbon on one of my little egg cartons. Look how absolutely cute and adorable he is, and let me know what you think about this last DIY. Guys, if you've stuck with me through this whole video, thank you so much. I love you guys. Now don't forget to give me a big thumbs up, and for those of you who haven't subscribed, come on man, join our family. Hit that red subscribe button. If you're looking for a community of love, laughs, and DIYs, you found your channel, my friend. I got this at Goodwill for $2.99, which is a good price for a good sturdy basket like this. It's really pretty. You can tell it was probably some little boy's Easter basket. Now I pulled off a piece of drop cloth, just regular old drop cloth. It's probably about a 8 by 6 maybe, and I'm totally guessing on that. So I was showing you here what you do is you can just make a slight rip in it with your scissors or a cut, and then you just rip it. And that's what gives it that beautiful rustic look on the outside where it's just kind of raggedy looking, and that's what's in style and that's what looks good. So I laid it across the front of my basket because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I'm going to sublimate this beautiful picture with the birds on the front of the drop cloth, and then I'm going to put the drop cloth on the basket. Now, the little birdie picture is a 4 by 6, and I do have this in my Etsy shop if you want it. It comes to your house ready to be sublimated. All you have to do is use your Cricut press or a shirt press to get it to work. A regular household iron does not get hot enough for it to work. So this is how you sublimate. You lay down your picture face first, like I'm doing here, and then I take my heat resistant tape and you just put a couple pieces down, and you don't have to go crazy with it, just 1 or 2 little pieces, and it's just so it won't move around whenever you put your iron on the top. So I put my Cricut Easy Press on the top at 400 degrees for 60 seconds. And when you first look at a picture
that is sublimated picture, it's not that bright. What makes it bright and colorful and brings out the colors is that heat. So when you actually do sublimated, it's a lot brighter. It turned out beautiful. So I just put a little bit of glue on the top to get it in place where I want it, and then on all four corners, and we put it on the front of the basket. Now, I did mention that I do have an Etsy shop that has all my sublimated prints in it, and it's Kathy's Crafty Boutique. And I will leave that down in the description box in case you are interested. I've been selling a lot of sublimated prints lately, and they are just prints that are sublimated, ready to be put on the fabric or whatever you're going to put them on. They're normally an 8x10 size, but this one I just shrunk down to a 4x6. Y'all that have been around my channel for a while know I love my buttons. So I took 4 small dark buttons, and I'm going to put those one on each corner. I was going to do tacks, but I thought, you know what? I want to do buttons. I do want my strings to be kind of raggedy and hanging, but I want them all to be about the same size. So the few little long ones, I just clipped them off, gave them a quick little haircut so it would all look uniform and look really nice. And then I'm going to take my leftovers that I have from my drop cloth, and it's just strips, probably 1-inch strip, and you twist it and you roll it around. I'm making a little flower. Now you just twist it and just roll it on itself. I hope that makes sense. You can see what I'm doing here. And then you just put a little bead of glue and it holds it there. I hope that you can see what I'm doing well enough to understand, but it's very, very simple. And when you're finished with this, it makes a cute little flower. Of course, these are short because my little piece of fabric was short. So my flower is just going to be a small flower. But of course, the longer the piece of drop cloth you have, the bigger the flower. And these little rosettes are super cute. I don't think you can mess them up. They're so easy. Now, how cute is this flower, y'all? So I'm just going to put that on the top right side. Just a little bead of glue will hold it up there. And we're almost finished with DIY number 1 already, guys. So I took a whole bunch of pieces of fabric, and they're just long pieces of drop cloth. If I had to guess, I would say they were probably maybe 10 inches long each, and maybe just an inch wide. I really didn't even measure them. I just cut a little slit with my scissors and ripped them, and then I cut them in half. And then here I'm getting some ribbon that I got for 98 cents at Walmart. All I'm going to do is make a little raggedy bow, and I'm just making X's. That's all you do to make this bow. And I just put a whole bunch of different ribbon in there and just different stuff. I'm going to tie it with some jute, and then we have our own cute little raggedy daggedy bow. I don't remember what these bows are called, but they're just little raggedy bows. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. I'm going to put it right up in the center of my basket. And just look how cute these turn out. I think these bows are so sweet. But I felt like it still needed something. And you guys know I love my Totally Dazzled, so I'm going to stick this jewel right in the middle of my ribbons. Now, I love the Totally Dazzled. They're really cheap. You can get like 10 pieces for $2, and I love to embellish my stuff with them. And I'm going to leave their link in the description box. That way you guys can go and get you some Totally Dazzled jewels. There's all different kinds. Right now, I've got some spring ones coming out. But here is how my basket turned out, and I think it's precious. This is going to sell really fast in the booth. Actually, it may not even make it to the booth. And I just styled it with some Easter grass and some Spanish moss and some of my little Easter eggs and a little flower in there. Now we're going into DIY number 2. I have an oval frame that I got from a thrift store for 99 cents. It's actually from Olin Mills. And if you guys remember, their prints and frames used to be very expensive. Well, I got it at a thrift store for 99 cents. I started using Home Decor's Nantucket, and I thought, this is too dark for what I want. So I'm going to mix in Glacier, which is a light blue, also by Home Decor. And I mixed the color and got kind of a medium-ish blue. And this was perfectly fine with me because I didn't want a very light blue and I didn't want a dark blue. But I had in mind what I was going to do with this, and I knew that I needed a proper shade, and this gave me the shade that I wanted. So I gave this oval frame 2 full coats. I just want to stop for a minute and let you guys know how much I appreciate y'all. My channel has seen a big boom lately, and we have a lot of new subscribers. And so I just wanted to take this minute to say welcome, thank you, and I love you very much. So now we're going to take some of the Debbie's DIY wax. It's white wax, and we're just going to lighten up this dark blue color, or it's not really dark, but for spring it's a little dark. So we're going to go with the Debbie's DIY wax. Different people do it in different ways. You pretty much just put it on, and I leave it on for just a few seconds, literally, or minutes. I mean, some people leave it on for an hour. That's what I'm saying. So it depends on the person. I leave it on for a few minutes because I'm always in a hurry, and then you just wipe it off, and it gives your frame some good protection. Plus, it lightens it up and just gives it that beautiful vintage vibe. So this is the back part of the frame, and what we're going to do is just trace it on this sheet music piece that I got from Hobby Lobby, and then we're just going to use our Elmer's school glue stick to make it stick on there. And if you watched the very end of my last video, I had just gotten in this rice paper, which is decoupage type paper. It's the same technique as when you put a napkin down on something. You decoupage it down with Mod Podge, except for that it's just a slightly different feel and there's not as many wrinkles. It's really easy to use. You just put down your Mod Podge and then you put down your piece that you want it on. Then you just very lightly go around the edges from the middle and go out, and that prevents wrinkles too. Next, I take my IOD stamps, and it's the typesetting stamps. They look like from a typewriter, and they have all large case and all lowercase. And I'm going to spell out the word spring. So what I'm going to do is just take, this is my DAS molding clay, but the very first thing I need to do is put a little bit of cornstarch over my letters, and that just helps it come off a little bit better whenever I want to get that mold off. What I'm going to do is get my mold and make a small ball and kind of roll it out like I'm rolling dough, and then I'm going to place it first off over the S, and then I'm going to roll it with my brayer, and it's going to make that S appear in there. And that cornstarch made it easier to come off. And then I just go through the whole process with the PRING to spell out the word spring. And so now that I have the word spring ready to go, what I'm going to do is use my Star Bond glue, and I'm going to glue that while it's still, can be moved around while it's still pliable. And we're going to put that on the side of our picture. And then you leave it alone overnight, and it's going to harden and freeze. And the reason why you put it on right away is because that way it will mold its shape to whatever shape that you're putting it on. So if you're putting it on something that's concave, it's going to mold to that shape and freeze that way.
It's absolutely genius. So after it had time to set up, I just used the Glacier, which is the lighter of the two blue colors. And I very lightly went over all my words because this is actually the first time that I've tried it this way, where you take your stamps and make a mold out of your stamps. And I wasn't too sure if I liked it. It was a little different for me because you guys know me and know me enough to know that I am kind of a perfectionist when it comes to my stuff. If it's shaped weird or a little different, I will worry myself to death until I fix it the way that I want it. Like, I just go crazy. So here it was after that first coat, and I wasn't exactly sure if I liked it yet. So I put a little antique wax with some water. I just really watered it down. And the reason why I'm going to do this is because we're going to go inside those letters, and it's the wax, the dark wax, is going to lay down inside each letter, and it's going to make it pop and really stick out. It gets in those low places. And of course, I'm just wiping off the excess as I go. And the whole time that I'm doing this, I'm thinking, do I really like this? Is this something that I even want to show as a DIY? But everything can be fixed. So what I did was go back with my white Adirondack, which is Home Decor's white color of chalk paint, and I went on the high points, which I had painted blue before, and I really like this a lot better. Everything can be fixed with paint. So if you get in a spot where you think things are looking kind of funny and you don't really know about it, just give it a chance and just try maybe a different color of paint, and it's going to surprise you. I just about bet that. Then again, I started looking at it and I thought, I don't know about the white. You guys are going to think I'm nuts, but this is what I go through every week. I love you guys so much. I want to make it perfect so I can kind of give you the good tips and tell you, go this way and don't do this. Don't mess up like I did. So I went back and I did the blue, and I had went around everything with that dark wax, that Waverly Antique wax, and I just kind of lightened it back up again. I distressed it in that blue color, which is that lighter blue, the Glacier. And then I was finally happy with the project, and I was like, this is the way it needs to go. So I'm going to put a little bird's nest down in the bottom. I'm going to throw up a little curveball to you. And so I just took a little Spanish moss, put it down in the corner, put a little bit of glue, and stuck that baby down there. Now, I take great pride in the stuff that goes in my booth. I want it to be creative and different. I don't want it to look like everybody else's booth. I want to throw something in there to make people say, oh my goodness, that's kind of weird, but I kind of like it. You know what I mean? That's what stands out. So I made 3 little tiny eggs out of that clay. I just rolled little ball out of the clay, and I'm going to stick those in the nest for the little eggs, and it's so cute. Oh my gosh. I want for the people that come into my booth to look at this and go, oh my goodness, that person had great creativity. Who would have ever thought to put a bird's nest on a frame? But see, when I go shopping for things, that's what I look for. I like for people to come into my house and be like, oh my goodness, that's so strange, or that's so different. But I like it. It's a good different. It's not a cookie cutter deal. And I'm definitely not a cookie cutter deal. I'm a little different too. But that's okay because we're all beautiful in our own special way, aren't we?
What's it like to be the one that he turns to when he's out of answers? What's it like to be the one that he comes to when he wants to dance?
If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would love to have you as part of my family and have your support on YouTube. All you have to do is hit that little red button and there's a bell beside it. And when you click that, YouTube's going to let you know when I come out with a video. And don't forget to give me a big thumbs up because it really helps support my channel. I have this large plastic egg that I got from Dollar Tree last year, and I was thumbing through Pinterest and I got the most amazing idea, and I thought, I can do this on a larger scale. So I'm going to use Home Decor's color called Oatmeal. It's kind of a khaki color, and I gave this egg 2 coats of that color. And when it dried, I went to my rice paper and I chose this beautiful picture of a little boy hugging an Easter bunny. It is the most precious picture. This rice paper was really easy to work with. I just put down a little bit of the Mod Podge and then it stuck. And I will leave in the description box below the lady's name that I got this from. But I also have other places where you can get this it's decoupage paper or rice paper is what it's called. And I have some coupons. All of this will be in the description box. So if you want anything that you see in this video, it will be in the description box. Now, if you have anything that you feel like you're getting wrinkles, you can use the saran wrap just like you do with the napkins. It's the exact same process. And then I start from the middle part and go down and outward whenever I am putting my Mod Podge on. So I got out my air dry clay and I am going to roll it around, put a little cornstarch on this little mold that I got. And this is just a cheap mold from Amazon. Okay, so what you do is you get your air dry clay and you push it down in whichever design that you want. And I use my brayer to help me, my little roller there. And then I just cut off any excess that's not the pattern itself. So once I figured out how I wanted my design to go, I just put a little bit of that Starbond glue on the back of each piece of this mold and just stuck it down in the pattern that I wanted. Then I took some of those gems that come from the Dollar Tree. I use these a lot and I really like them. They peel off in one long strip and they're so easy. And I'm trying to cover up where that egg clicks together in the middle because it's not ever going to open again. I actually put a little bit of glue inside the seal there so it wouldn't. And I just put these little gems all the way around this egg. And it's so beautiful, guys. Like this camera doesn't even do this egg justice. It's really pretty. And it's from the Dollar Tree. Hello. So in the spirit of all things Dollar Tree, I figured that I'd use one of their candlesticks. I got my white Adirondack and I gave this candlestick 2 full coats. Then I took my little water bottle that's one of those misters and I misted the whole candlestick so it would be slightly wet. And then I used my antique wax all over this candlestick and then I wiped it off. Then I used my Debbie's DIY white wax and I put it all over that scrolly design. Now this is the next day when it was absolutely dry and molded and hard. And then I just used a little bit of water and antique wax, and this time I did mix it. I didn't just squirt it on. You can see it in the little palette thingy there. And at first I went kind of lightly. I used a distressing brush and just kind of distressed it on. And then when I saw how pretty it was, I started going a little bit darker with it. And meaning just using a little bit more of the wax instead of kind of wiping it off. And guys, man, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. And right here's where we get into the serious cuteness. I took some of that white Adirondack and put it on that distressing brush and went over that brown antique wax. And you want to talk about beautiful, guys. I mean, I want to keep this. It's so pretty, but I know that it will be sold on day one of going in that booth. And then I took this stinky old grass. I don't know if any of y'all have ever bought this grass from Dollar Tree, but mine stunk. It smelled like a rotten skunk went in there and just sprayed all over it. And then peed all over it. Oh, you talk about raunchy stink. It smelled like a wet dog. It was just, I don't even know what it smelled like. It was so bad. I can't describe it. But I put just a couple little sprigs on each side because we're going to set our egg in it. And I hope and pray to the good Lord that when somebody picks this egg up, they don't go, oh dear, what died on this egg? So one of my sweet subscribers sent me this rickrack, and it was last year. I don't even remember who sent me it. It's been so long. And it's so pretty, and I'm going to use this to wrap it around the very top part of my little candlestick just to give it a little something to make it a little extra. And guess what? I'm going to use one of my little Totally Dazzled pieces, and this is a little ribbon or a little bow, if you will, and we're going to put that on there, and this baby is done. I hope you guys like it. I forgot I did add one single solitaire little flower up at the top because I thought it just gave it a little something something, and now it's done. Then for my very last DIY, what I'm going to do is take two little sublimated prints that I have. I made them like maybe 3x5, 4x6, that size. And I painted 2 pieces of wood, just gave it 1 coat, and then I gave it 2 coats of polyacrylic. Now, we are going to do some sublimation on wood. This is the first time I have sublimated on wood myself, and I didn't read the directions and I made it a little bit too hot, but next time we're going to know the exact temperature. It still turned out fine, but next time we can go a little bit lower and get a better result. So I went 400 degrees for 60 seconds, and I was supposed to have went 385 degrees for about 20 seconds. And when I tried to pull the paper back up, it was a little hot and it stuck in one spot, but that's okay because I go for the vintage rustic look anyways, and it actually looked like it was supposed to be that way. But now we know, and you see me trying to get this piece of paper up where it stuck just a little, and it wasn't that big of a deal. Here's a quick view of the 2 pieces. The one is there beside that big egg, and it's the little bunny rabbit with the tuxedo on, and the other one is just like a French flower. So our very, very last DIY, look at this gorgeous vase that I got from Goodwill, and it is a French vase that had French writing on it. I thought it was so pretty, but I'm not really into that color, so we're going to put this in our booth, and it's just going to be to stage stuff. The very first thing that I did is gave this 1 coat of white Adirondack. Then I used the Waverly color called Lagoon, but first I took some wax and went all over the high points of this vase so that the paint would come off easily. And this was a beautiful color, this Lagoon, but it's not the same color of blue that I did in the rest of the vignette. And I don't know why I didn't think about that until after I was finished with it. Then to get the paint off, what I did was used my little Cricut tool, and you just kind of scrape and the paint very easily comes off. At this point, I just remember I was putting on the Debbie's DIY white wax all over it and thinking that maybe it would lighten this blue color up enough to where it would match the rest of the vignette, but of course it didn't. So after I put that on and then wiped it off,
I added the florals that I had got from Walmart the other day, and they're gorgeous, by the way. And these florals looked so pretty with this color that I had chosen for this vase. But then I actually decided to change it to that same color that I had painted the picture frame from earlier, and it was a mixture of the Nantucket blue and the glacier blue that I used to get that same blue color that was the rest of the vignette. And this vase still turned out beautiful, but I really loved that first color. I just couldn't use it because it didn't match with the rest of my vignette. I bought this picture from a thrift store for $5, and it's a 20 by 30. Now, I want to make something out of it, but look how dirty and dingy this thing is. So the first thing that I wanted to do is get it cleaned up, and I gave it 2 coats of my Rust-Oleum 2x spray paint in the matte white. And Kitty Nala decided to take a break from terrorizing my chickens for a minute. Now back inside, while my spray paint is drying, I cut me a pretty good size of drop cloth off, just regular old drop cloth, and I'm going to measure out the backing of that picture frame. The opening that the picture that I need is a 12 by 15, and I just cut a random piece. I didn't even measure this. I just kind of made sure it's going to wrap around it the way I need it to. And I just glued all 4 corners on the back. I just used that piece of cardboard that came in the frame in the first place. I'm not really paying special attention to make sure that this looks beautiful on the back because number 1, this is covered up, and number 2, it's just going in my house anyway. Now there was just a little bit of extra overhang, and just to make it easier to put back in the frame, I just kind of cut that off because all you need is just it wrapped around, and you got to wrap around it pretty tightly to make sure that the front is taut and looks good. Now, after I got it cleaned up and spray painted 2 times, look how pretty this is. It turned out so nice. So I flipped it over to the back, and I'm just going to lay that piece right back down in there. I'm not putting the glass back in there because that's the style. We don't want the glass in there. And then I put that last backing piece on, and it was screwed on, so I just screw everything back in the way that it's supposed to go. I had so many people interested in my sublimation prints last week. I'm going to show you another way to use it. Look at this beautiful bunny picture. All right, what you're going to do is just lay your picture down face first. You're going to take your heat-resistant tape. Now, last time I did this, I forgot to put down my tape, so you don't necessarily have to have the tape. You just have to be careful that you don't move your picture around while you are using your press. So you put your tape down and you put your wax paper down. Then you just press it on 400 degrees for 60 seconds. Now, a regular household iron will not get hot enough to heat a sublimated print up, so I just want to let you guys know that. I definitely don't want anybody to go to my Etsy store and buy a print and then be mad at me because I forgot to tell you. But these are available in my Etsy store at Kathy's Crafty Boutique. And whoa, look how beautiful this turned out. I'm doing a happy dance. I always get so excited when I pull that iron back and see how beautiful the sublimation is. So I take my Waverly's Antique Wax and I'm just going to distress this a little bit because it was just too stark white for me. I like the vintage look and I want it to have a little bit of distressing to it. I'm a farmhouse girl most of the time. So I just went around, and this had these beautiful like little divots all in the frame. So the high points just grabbed that antique wax so beautifully, and it distressed so perfectly, guys. It was gorgeous. And then after it's dry, I always go back over it with the white paint again, very, very lightly. I use my white Adirondack by Home Decor, and I just go over it, like I said, very lightly. And I just like the way it looks. It gives it a more naturally worn appearance.
I'm going to take 4 of these little half beads that I have, and I just painted them with the antique wax and just lightly wiped it off with a baby wipe. And we're going to take those and put those one on each corner of the picture because I just thought it gave it a little something extra, and I'm kind of extra. Once I get started on my projects, I keep thinking, but what if I do this? Well, what if I do that? And I keep adding and adding. But wait till you see the very last thing I add on this. I love to use the Totally Dazzled jewels to finish up a lot of my projects, and this is no different. It gives it a 3D effect, and I have them linked down below just in case you guys want some. I really enjoy using them because they're not expensive at all, and they make everything pop. Now, anything that I mention in my videos, I always put in the description box below. That way, it will be super easy for you guys to find it.
I miss you so bad, won't you come back to me? I've got you in my head, you're all that I see. I've lost all my chances.
Let me know what you think about this sublimation project and the print. I think it's beautiful.
For me, that little bow in her hair just does it. I think that's the cutest thing ever.
I picked up this floral arrangement pot, I guess you could call it, from the Goodwill. I don't remember how much I paid for it, but I really like the color that's already on it, and I like the way that it looks crackled, and it already looks distressed, but there was a couple little spots that I just needed to touch up, and it's brown, so I just used my Waverly's antique wax to touch those little spots up. Now, since it's springtime and we're wanting to do light, you know, this is kind of dark for spring. So what we're going to do is use the DIY wax, the Debbie's DIY wax, and we're going to lighten it down and soften it up. And what I did was just brushed this all over, and it doesn't take much of this wax. It takes very, very little, and it's so buttery and soft. It goes on great. I'll leave it on for about 1 hour. Leave it alone, and then I just use like a napkin and wipe most of it off, and it just gives it a softer tone and just very, I don't know, feminine, Victorian, vintage, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. And also, I'm going to use a gorgeous transfer on this that has yellow in it, so I thought it would really bring that out. So as you see, I'm just lightly wiping it off. You don't have to go hard with it, but if there's a spot that you want a little bit more of the wax off, I just kind of wet the end of my paper towel. No big deal. This stuff is super easy to use. I take my transfer, and it's my little birdies from last week. Do you remember that I told you in my IOD transfers, I had this long line of birds. There was like 10 or 12 birds, and there's 2 pages of it. So I only needed a couple birds to go on this, and I needed that yellow in that flower pot to go with the yellow on my little birdie's breast. And I thought, man, this gonna look good. So I laid it down, and you get it exactly where you want it. And if you need to scoot it around a little bit, it's not gonna stick like the Dollar Tree ones do. You know, right as soon as you lay them down, you're done. But with this one, it's not really like that. You lay it down, get it where you want it, and then you get your little scratchy tool, I call it. It's a little tool that they send you, and you're just going to kind of scrape it, and your beautiful birds are going to come off on there. I have found if you hold the edge of the transfer up while you're scraping that area, it helps it to stick so much better, and it just makes it easier. The sisters that own the company say it's like riding a wave, and I mean, that's the only way that I can describe it. That is what it feels like, and it makes it so much easier to come off the way that you want it to. Then you just take that little piece of plastic that the transfer was on, and you rub it around like, it's called burnishing it. And it's like basically just pushing it down and making sure that it's going to stick real good. Now this is what it looks like so far. I've got some eucalyptus that comes from Walmart, the 97-cent kind. And I also had like a garland of eucalyptus that I got from, I want to say it was maybe like TJ Maxx or somewhere like that. But anyways, I just cut it up into pieces, and I'm going to use that too. I always put my tallest pieces in the middle, and then I try to put on one side, whatever I put on one side, I try to put the exact same thing on the other side.
Like, see, for example, this piece of eucalyptus kind of flops over, like falls over. And that's what I want. And so I did that on the exact opposite side and try to match the sizes so that they look, you know, perpetual. What's the word? So they look the same. I may be from Tennessee, but I do know what proportional means. And that's what I meant to say. Okay, I promise. Now, I just have a few little twigs. And honestly, I don't know what these are. They just came from the thrift store. And then the one that I'm cutting right now came from the Dollar Tree. And I just kind of add a little bit here and there. If it's a taller stem, I put it in the middle. I always like to try to put about 3 different types of greenery in my plants because to me, I think it looks better. It looks more natural. Now, this one was called a silver green eucalyptus. It was from the Dollar Tree. It don't matter because I decided not to use it anyway. I didn't really like it that much. And at this point, I was trying to figure out what I was going to put in here. Now, everything else that I did today is lavender because lavender is going to be the color of spring. I'm just telling y'all, all the magazines and decor stuff is saying lavender this and lavender that, which I like it. It's great. So we're going to go with lavender too. So now I'm going to try to rock the boat just a little bit. I'm going to use some marigolds that I got from the Dollar Tree in the fall. And it's kind of a cream color. So I'm just going to add a couple of those in there. I didn't want to do white. I'm more of a cream color kind of girl instead of a stark white. So I just put about 4 of those in there. And I put one on one side and one on that opposite side. I just kind of eyeball it, see what I think is going to look good. And then off camera, once I kept looking at this thing and thinking, okay, I'm just going to do it. And so I had 4 little pieces of lavender that I stuck in here, and you will see them in the pictures, but I didn't record myself doing it, and I'm sorry. But you can see I didn't really stick them in any big form or fashion. They're just 1, 2, 3, 4 across the middle. And hey guys, this is adorable. And it was it was very easy and quick. And honestly, I know that there was nothing purple on the front of this flower vase or anything like that, but I don't like my stuff to be matchy-matchy. To me, and this is my personal preference, I find if you add a little bit of variation, to me, I think it looks better. All right, let's go into number 3. I've got 4 flower pots that I got from Discovery Outlet for just $2.99, and I had previously painted them. And I made these little stencils off of my Cricut. I just used the stencil vinyl, and I always try to go with easy things like just the outline of a bunny, because if I go with small intricate details, the Cricut don't like me very much when I do that. But now with my one little bunny, he does have little flowers all in him, and he turned out cute. Now, I had previously painted these pots with baking soda and chalk paint. I do 1-to-1 ratio. And what I mean by that is if I use 1 teaspoon of paint, I use 1 teaspoon of baking soda, the exact same equivalents. And I just kind of pack it on with my brush. But since I had already painted those, I just wanted to let you know. And so we're going to put our little stencil on. And I wanted them to go in like on the biggest one and the third biggest one, because these go in size, like they step down in sizes. So on the blue pot, I put just the outline of the bunny. And since the paint was so thick and it was so textured, it was really hard to get this vinyl to stick to it. It didn't want to stick to it. And I thought, oh, that's not very good, because you know, if you've ever done a stencil before, you definitely want the edges of your stencil to be stuck down good, because if not, that paint will sneak down under there, and before you know it, it will bite you in the bottom, and you'll be like, oh no, I didn't see it coming. So I just pushed down really, really well all around the edges of my little bunny rabbit. And I thought, you gonna work, buddy. I'm gonna make you work. And so I took my other little bunny rabbit, the one that had all the little flowers on him. And he is adorable. And I'm kind of surprised that he turned out as cute as he did. So I put him on my little pink pot. I'm just going to use the Waverly ink chalk paint, which is their black color, and I got a stencil brush from Jamie Ray Vintage, and so I'm going to try this stencil brush out, and all you do is pounce. Now, since these didn't want to stick too good, I was kind of careful around the edges. I took my time to make sure that I didn't let that thing bleed underneath there, because there's nothing worse than pulling off a stencil and being all excited and it just looks like a big old blah blah blah. You know what I mean? It's nothing. It's shapeless, and you're just like, really? It just breaks my heart every time. But look how cute he turned out. Oh, it makes me want another little bunny rabbit for just a brief moment. But you know what? I have my little pug, Shabby. I have a cat that came from the Humane Society, and she just gives all kinds of terror to my poor chickens, my little hens, my baby girls. And I'm just telling y'all right now, she's going to be something else this spring, because I have rose bushes all around my pool, and we probably had about 10 birds with nests out here, and we got to watch the babies hatch. We even got to watch them fly away from their mamas, and look how beautiful this is. But anyways, I just know she's going to be a terror. Now, I was real simple at the way that I decorated these. I put some tissue paper down inside of them, and the reason why I did that is so I wouldn't have to use so much of the moss and the Spanish grass. I used a combination of both, by the way. Now, I get mine from the Dollar Tree, which reminds me, if you'll look at the bottom right of the screen, I took a couple of those small eggs from the Dollar Tree, and I used my baking soda and paint mixture because they had big specks of glitter on them, and I wanted to cover it up, so I just painted them with that. Now, I've got this little bird that I got at Dollar General last year, and I painted her white and distressed her, and I'm going to set her on top of one of the nests. I even stuck one or two little twigs in there to make the nest look authentic. I stuck the bird in top of the flower pot that did not have the stencil on it, and then I took the other one that didn't have the stencil on it, which is the cream colored one, and I'm going to do the exact same thing, except for on the top of it, I'm going to place one of the little bunny rabbits that comes from the Dollar Tree, and I also painted him that same way with the chalk paint and baking soda. Now, the two pots that do have the stencils on them, I wanted them to be just a little bit different. I tried out a couple flowers, but of course I went back to the lavender. So I just put one or two little sprigs of some type of greenery in there and one or two little sprigs of the lavender. And I literally pulled the lavender off of the little stem. It's the lavender that comes from the Walmart, the 97-cent lavender. I pulled it off the stem and popped a couple of them in each of those little pots. And these are adorable. And I've got this beautiful little strand of pearls. Remember when I told you that when I start on a DIY, I just keep on and can't stop? Okay, well, this was one of those. I just cut the pearls in just a couple of small pieces and kind of wrapped it around the front of each pot.
One of my sweet subscribers sent me these pearls, and they had these perfect little sticky backs on them, which made them easy to just stick to the cup.
I started sticking my little eggs in a couple of these pots and realized I did not put specks on my eggs, so I'm going to have to do that. But first, I took a little bit of jute twine and just tied it around twice around the top and just tied a double knot up there, nothing special, and I just kind of made like the ends of it kind of frilly and pretty. Then I got some black paint on the end of that stencil brush, only because it was already wet and I didn't want to get another one dirty. And I just kind of flicked it off of my finger, and that's how I get my little specks on my eggs. And then I added those to my pots.
Young, and we didn't want to be exposed. Even though it was cold, we were never wearing proper clothes. Always trying to be cool, trying to be those bad guys, smoking cigarettes behind the school. Always trying to be cool, trying to be those bad guys, you know. I still think about what we had.
All right, our last DIY is a really quick one. I have this little bunny, and this bunny was in my video last week. He's just a little paper mache bunny that I got from a thrift store. He actually still has the tag on him, and I use him when I'm staging my pictures. So I wanted to do something with him because he looks a little sick to me. I don't know, and he's got this big hole in the side of his bottom. Not really a big hole, but just like a little, you know, cut, a little scratch. We got to fix him up. So I paid $2.99 for him. I took him outside and I gave him 2 coats of the satin spray paint. It's the Rust-Oleum 2 times, and it was called Smoky Beige. He won't be for sale in my booth, but I'm just going to updo him so he don't look so sickly on us. So what I did was take that thin ribbon, that's the lace from Dollar Tree. It's my favorite ribbon that they have. And I'm simply going to wrap it around his neck one time and glue it off. Then I took 4 of those little sprigs of lavender. I laid them together, and I'm just going to tie a knot around those with my jute twine. And then I glued that right at the side of his neck. Then I took one of the little roses from Solar Wood Flowers, and I just left it the color that it is because it's kind of like a cream color. I snipped the end of it off, and we're just going to glue it right on the end where all the lavender meet. And one of my precious subscribers had sent me these little keys last year from Tim Holtz, and it says secret on it. And the reason why I picked that one that said secret on it is because it's like a secret that he's the Easter bunny. I don't know, I just thought that was cute. I pay attention to every single detail, y'all. I cannot help myself. So all I did was just tie that around his little neck. And I got this tray at the thrift store. I think it was like $2.99. I took it outside and gave it a coat of the matte white by Rust-Oleum 2 times. Of course, if you've been around my channel long, you know that that's my favorite spray paint is the Rust-Oleum 2 times. And I'm just going to take some of the mineral colored chalk paint by Waverly and just run it over it real quick and distress it. At my Walmart, the shelves are like completely bare in the spray paint area. And I'm just wondering, across the country, is it like that everywhere? You guys leave me a comment and let me know if you've noticed that your Walmarts are really running low on spray paint. I don't understand why that is. Okay, the outside of this has some really pretty leaves, and I just want to go over that really good with the distressing brush so you can see that beautiful detail. Then here's where I took that garland that I got from TJ Maxx or wherever it was and just kind of cut it up. I think it was probably about 5 feet long when it started, or 4 feet. I cut it into a couple of bigger pieces, and my plan for this bunny is really simple. I also have different types of greenery because, you know, I told you I like to use all different types of greenery when I'm doing anything floral. So what we're going to do is get our little tray, and we're just going to we're going to set our bunny in there first, and then we're going to just start setting this greenery all around him. I got this idea off of Pinterest. I thought it was so cute. It was a little bunny in a round tray, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to stick my bunny in this tray, and we're going to make it work, and it's going to look good. And I just think it's adorable, and it's just cute as it can be. So I had no rhyme or reason where I put the twigs. I just laid them kind of everywhere. And then I took some of those, that beautiful lavender that I've been talking about all through my video, and I just added some of the sprigs here and there. I pulled the actual sprigs off and laid that down everywhere. I'm really glad that lavender is going to be a very popular color this spring because I think it's beautiful and I love it in everything. I added some of that Spanish moss kind of here and there to make it look like he's really standing in a little field full of flowers and stuff. And I started seeing this little guy really coming to life. I took a little bit of the Waverly's antiquing wax and just kind of antiqued him up, just kind of here and there all over his little body. Then I took 2 ribbons. I took that little thin white lace one that I like so much from the Dollar Tree and laid it on top of one that looks like, kind of like burlap.
And I just tied it in a figure-8 style bow, and I'm going to put this right in the front center of the little basket. I'm going to add another one of these little totally dazzled jewels, and it's a ribbon, and I'm going to stick it right in the center of my ribbon. Then, as a final step, I just added some of those little eggs and a couple of those little roses from the solar wood flowers, and this baby's done, and I think it's cute as a bug. Well, cute as a bunny. Y'all let me know what you think about this one. Hey, if you stuck around through this whole video, I just want to thank you. I appreciate each and every one of y'all so very much. I am going to be using Waverly's ink, which is their black chalk paint. This plate that I got, it's actually a charger from Dollar Tree, and this beautiful He Is Risen stencil. I got that off of Amazon, and it is linked in my Amazon store. So I just used like a little dabber, I guess you call it, and it was kind of tough holding this thing down to get it just right around the edges because I didn't want to smear anything. And all you do is just dab. I'm one of the ones that do my stencils. I don't go in circles. I just dab it straight up and down because I think it makes it look a little more distressed, and I think it looks better. So I went all the way around the parts that says He Is Risen. I also went over the verse, Matthew 28:6, and it was a lot easier and quicker to go over because I didn't have to fight over those sides of the charger. Now there was a couple little places that I need to touch up, but it was no big deal. I used the end of one of those little embossing tools that had a point on it, almost like a pen. And I just put a baby wipe on the end of it, and it wiped right off. This charger is actually my favorite charger from the ones at Dollar Tree. I think it's a beautiful color, and what a beautiful message for this Easter season. There was a couple of areas to touch up with the paint, and I just took that baby wipe off and used that same little sharp point on the embosser to fix that up. Then I just took some beautiful lace ribbon that I had got from a thrift store, and I'm just going to make a very simple bow. All I did was just wrapped it around in a circle formation, glued it down, and made another in the same circle formation that was just a little bit smaller. And you just glue the ends of it together, and you pinch it together in the middle, and it makes a beautiful little bow. I grabbed another longer piece that I'm going to use for the tails, and then I just grabbed a zip tie, a white zip tie, and that is how I'm going to pull all this together. You put the zip tie in the middle, and you just pull it, and it makes your perfect bow. But when I laid this bow down, it just didn't look perky enough to me. It didn't look like it's going to be enough of a bow. Now, I'm not a big bow person, and I don't like a lot of gaudy bows on my stuff. And I wanted it to be small, but it was just almost too minimal, you know? So I just chopped the ends of it off and started cutting it up everywhere to kind of make like a shabby bow or almost like a messy bow, and see if that would make any difference because it would make it a little bit poofier. And I'm just going to use the simple eucalyptus that comes from the Walmart. All I did was take my 2 stems that I'm going to use and wrapped my jute twine around it a couple of times and just glued that off. And I actually put a little dab of glue at the top of my plate. I keep calling it a plate, it's a charger. At the top of my charger, and then I put my jute down to it. So if I want to pull it up, it's going to be easy. So let's see what this messy, shabby bow looks like on here. I'm just going to stick it right in the middle and see what I'm going to... No, I still didn't like it. So I ran outside and made one real quick with that Mod Podge Stiffy. Now, these bows do not have any type of wire in them, but when you use that product called Mod Podge Stiffy, it makes it stiff. And I stuck a little solar wood flower in there, and that one was perfect. I have this little lamb that I think is adorable. I bought it off of Etsy. It's just a little wood lamb. And, you know, Jesus is the Lamb of God. And so I thought, you know, this charger needs a little something else. So I just painted my little lamb white, of course, because white is the color of holiness and purity. And so I just painted it white with one little coat, and I'm just going to glue it down to the side of my sign. And then I did take a Sharpie, a black Sharpie, and kind of outline my little lamb so it would, you know, stand out a little bit more. But I think this is gorgeous and so easy and simple and beautiful for the Easter season.
Saw you paint a picture of a face that wasn't even close to mine. I know I shouldn't be in love.
This next one is some little wood tags that I got from Woodpecker Crafts, and I'm just going to show you some quick little ways that I like to sublimate these. I didn't really make any DIYs out of these per se. I just made little tags so that when I sell something in my booth, I can just use my little crocodile and pop a hole in the top of it and use it as a sweet little tag, and it's a nice little gift to give people. I think it just kind of, you know, brings stuff up a notch. What you just saw me do was use my little laminating plastic sheets to the bunny. And the first one that I did was I just literally pulled an image up off of Google. It's with some flowers, and it's like a French saying. It's really pretty. Anything flowery is, you know, pretty. And it says carte postale. And I thought that was cool. So I put this on my little bunny, and we're just going to sublimate that on there. But I wish I would have painted my bunny before I did that. I always get in a hurry and forget to paint them when I'm sublimating. What is wrong with me? It still turned out beautiful, and what a sweet little gift to give someone when they buy something from the booth. Look how sweet this is. And in my Etsy shop, if you ever want to buy something that is a smaller type sublimation like this, you just need to let me know. There is a tab on there where you can get a couple of the smaller pieces for the same price, but you just get several more smaller ones. Okay, so I've got my little circle round here, and I'm painting one white, and I painted the other one with a color called Irish, which is that green color. So see, I did remember to paint these before I sublimated, so I don't know, you know, it's just kind of one of them things. I went to my Cricut, and I'm going to use my vinyl stencil, or is it stencil vinyl? I don't remember how you say it, but anyways, it's the Oracle brand, and I just printed out the words, be still and know. You know, that's from the Bible, be still and know that I'm the Lord. So what you do is you actually weed the middle part, and then you still put it down with your little tape if you need to. And I just used the black ink Waverly color. I can't talk, but I used that and dabbed it on there, and that's what I made the stencil with. My goodness. And on the green one, I'm taking this beautiful little French bunny image, and I'm going to sublimate that on the front. And I absolutely love the way that this one turned out. I think that green is very breathtaking. And with this bunny, I took and copied a page out of the red back hymnal and just sublimated it on there. And I think it turned out really sweet and vintage looking. In the very last design, I just took a wood circle and I sublimated another page from the red back hymnal. I just thought these were sweet and wanted to show you. So now my next project is going to be these decor transfers, and I'm just going to take a little bit of drop cloth, and I'm going to cut out about a 5x7. No, actually, I would say it's about a 3x5 square inch. And you know, when you start cutting your drop cloth, you can just rip it, and it rips down straight, and it gives you those little scraggly sides, which is what I love, absolutely love. And I'm just going to take and use my little Prima redesign transfers that has the bunny, and I'm going to put him in the middle of that. Sorry that I'm going a little quick through this video, but just for the sake of time, I didn't want it to drag on and you guys be bored. So they send you the little object that you scrape it with, and pretty much all you do is scrape it on your image. It's pretty easy to go down to fabrics, and I'm going to place it on this 5x7 frame that I actually got at the Dollar Tree, and it is the cutest little frame. And I'm going to keep it black because I thought that color would pop. And then it's just got a little hook at the top where you can stick your picture. From the same transfer, I took these two little ferns and I'm going to put them on the sides of my bunny because he just seemed kind of plain, you know, without anything else. So I put those on there too with my little tool. Sometimes I find it easier to use literally a fingernail or my Cricut tool, just whatever you can find to get your transfer off. And when I clipped my bunny on, I felt like it was still a little plain, so I went to my stash and I got some of my Totally Dazzled jewels and went through them, and I found this cute little jewel. And so I'm just going to glue that right to the very top part just to give it a little something something. And that's all I did to finish this project.
Come to the water where you will find peace. Take a step into the river. Get down on your knees. Come to the mountain. Well, take it in the view. You will find that life is greater than you knew when you go.
I wanted to use this color again called Irish. I thought it was really pretty. And I have this beautiful little porcelain bowl that I got from the thrift store. Okay, I know it's not porcelain, but I'm calling it that, okay. And it has really pretty designs on the outside, so I just gave it 2 coats all over of this Irish color. And I also have a candle holder that you'll see to the right, and it's got little bunnies on it, and I'm going to give it 2 coats of this color Irish also.
And you let the bridges burn. So come to the water. You're sailing with the breeze. Take a step into the river where you will find peace.
I'm going to put some good old Debbie's white wax on this, but first I'm just going to use a little bit of clear wax because I tend to use too much of the white wax. And if you use clear wax underneath it, it's easier to get it off if you need some of it off. Now, I'm not a fan of this home decor white wax, or clear wax, I'm sorry. It's too runny. I just want to say that. To me, it's too runny. So I put it on and wiped it off a little bit, but I love, there's nothing like this Debbie's DIY white wax. All you do is just put it on, and it's your preference. You can take it right back off that minute. I've seen some people leave it on for an hour, so it's all up to you. But you basically put it on and wipe it off. I'm going to show you the difference in the color because people say, why do you put white wax on that? Look at the difference in the color of these. The little bowl is what I just did, and look at all the little designs on it popping. And then the little candle holder there with the bunnies I hadn't done yet. But did you see that? It's a major difference, and it's really pretty. I wanted to go heavy on my bunnies, and so I did.
Well, take it in the view. You will find that life is greater than you knew when you go through the storm. I will hold you, keep you warm when you stay in the night.
It's amazing how it makes every single detail just pop and beautiful. I took that little dish and I put 2 tiny birds in it that I got off of Amazon. They are linked in my Amazon store. And I laid down a walnut and made teeny tiny eggs out of clay. And I think it's so cute.
The water, you're sailing with the breeze. Take a step into the river.
The next DIY is this beautiful little bunny cutout that I got from the Hobby Lobby. And I got this fabric at Dollar Tree, y'all, and this fabric is beautiful. I found like 3 different ones that I really liked. And what I'm going to do is just Mod Podge this fabric onto my bunny so it's not so plain. And guys, that bunny was $3.99 half off, so I only paid like $2 for him. And so what I'm going to do, since this is fabric, I'm going to use a pretty good thick layer of the Mod Podge because we definitely want it to stick. And I used my hands and a brayer to kind of push the fabric up as I was putting it on the bunny. That way, it was almost like I was ironing it out, and I was pushing it up so there wouldn't be any wrinkles and so it would be nice and taut. And I cut a little hole to pull his tail through.
So come to the water where you will find peace. Take a step into the river and get down on your knees.
I let that bunny dry all night, and this was the next day. You see, when I picked it up, the fabric was stiff as a board, and I started by just cutting the excess fabric off. I even tried to use like a little sander, and it just wasn't coming off very easily. And so I just took out my little X-Acto knife and cut off all the excess. Then I just pulled out a little bit of that lace ribbon that's very vintage looking. It comes from the Dollar Tree. I absolutely love it. And I just glued it on the back so it would look like it's a little girl with a little necklace on. And I put a hair bow in her hair and a couple of solo wood flowers.
What's it like to be the one that he turns to when he's out of answers? What's it like to be the one that he comes to when he wants to dance? And I wonder what's that
The next one is a thrift store find that I've had for a while. It's actually a little soap dish, but we're going to turn it into a little, kind of like a little basket, if you will. And so I had already painted him white with Waverly's white chalk paint. And I'm going over it with that clear white wax. And then I'm just going to take my Waverly's antique wax and I'm going to go over him. I went over him a little heavy in some spots and a little lighter in other spots. But I basically just put that antique wax on and wiped the majority of it off. And that's all I did for this little guy. And I staged him by putting some of the fake grass, the reindeer moss that comes from the Dollar Tree. I put it in the little soap dish. And I put some of the moss in there too. And I added a little bird in there and some cute little eggs. And I absolutely love all the decor on the front of this little dish because it came to life when I added that antique wax to it. And it made it so sweet and cute. And it just gave him new life. And this is old decor I've had for a while. And you can juice up your old decor and use it. And in spots where I overdid the antique wax, I just go right back over with the white paint and we fixed it up.
thinking about him, and would he understand if I told him?
This next one is probably the easiest of them all. I got this beautiful ornate frame for $1.99 at the Discovery Outlet. And it came from Walmart. It holds a 5x7. All I'm going to do is just take the sticker off and I'm going to give it some white paint. I give it 2 coats of the white Adirondack by Home Decor. When it was totally dry, I just took a clean microfiber cloth and wiped over it, and that distressed it beautifully. Then I added the Bible verse, Matthew 28:6 in there. He is not here, for he is risen, as he has said. Come see the place where the Lord lay. I love that. This is such a pretty frame for $2, and honestly, I would prefer and don't mind paying the extra dollar over Dollar Tree because the quality is so much better. That frame came from Walmart. I've got a huge tin can that had green beans in it. I took everything off of it, and we're going to use Home Decor's white Adirondack, and I'm just going to give it one quick coat. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just trying to get a base coat down so that when we do our mold, it's going to be white underneath and you won't see that gold peeking out. We're going to use a mold by Prima Redesign, and it's called Avian Love. It's got some beautiful birds on the front, and I'm going to use my DAS clay. All you do is get you some clay in your hand and roll it around, get it good and warmed up, and you just push it down into the mold. These are very easy to work with as long as you have a good clay. You always want to put some cornstarch down, just brush it around inside your mold because it makes it a lot easier for it to come up. And you just basically just put your mold down in there. I also just heard that if you put your mold in the freezer for 15 minutes after you get it made, that it will pop out very easily. Now, I put clay in this whole entire mold, but in the end, I decided not to use the whole thing. You'll see in just a moment. And once I get all the clay in there, you just push down with your fingers. You want to get a good straight back, or try to get it as straight as you can, because that's what's going to glue onto something. And then you just flip it over and get it out of there. And a lot of times if you bend your mold, it will come out very, very easily. I had a little bit of a tough time trying to get my birds out of here. I kind of had to do them one by one. You know, on the mold, they're actually attached. But I kind of had to do them one by one and then piece them back together once I had them out. Now, I didn't know about that freezer technique before this video, so I'm going to definitely try that next time. I had a little issue trying to get these guys out, as you see. I've been so sick this week with COVID, and my back went out in the middle of all of it, so I hope you guys can just have mercy with me through this video. But as you see, I'm sitting there kind of wrestling a little bit with this, and I didn't bend it as much as I could either. A lot of times when you bend that mold, like almost in half, it'll come out a lot easier. These are super easy to put on. I use my Star Bond instant glue. You can use any type of an instant glue. I've even seen people use that Type Bond wood glue. Just something that's permanent. E6000, something like that. I basically just kind of laid everything down to see exactly where I wanted it. And then you very carefully flip it back over. Now you do this when the clay is still pliable and it moves around very easy, because you want it to form to whatever you're laying it on. So you don't want to wait until it hardens up, because then it would just be flat and you couldn't get it on that curved surface there, if that makes sense. So see, you just put your glue on the back and put your little birdies down, and then you leave it alone for 24 hours and let it cure. And if I have any imperfections, like little pieces that I want to come off there, you can use a small nail file, or you can even use your X-Acto knife and just kind of scrape and like cut it to get that little extra piece off. I mixed 1 part baking soda to 1 part of Waverly's Moss paint. And you want the consistency of kind of like a melted milkshake, or that's how I like it, where it's kind of still thick. Now, we're going to put this all over our little can, and we're going to daub it on so it gives it some real pretty texture. I find that if you use a sponge, you get a much better result. It's just, I don't know how to explain it, but you definitely get a better result than you do of using a brush. It just gives it a little bit more of that thickness and that texture that I like. Then I got my Waverly's Antique Wax and I watered it down just a little bit, and we're going to put that all over the can, mostly on the bottom to kind of give it a little bit of a rusty-ish effect. And then I put it all around the picture of the birds and stuff too, so that they would stand out a little bit. Then I went over everything with Waverly's Mineral. And I used a brush to do this, and I very, very lightly wisped it over the birds because I'm going to put several different colors on those birds so that all of their little wing effects will stick out. You're going to see every little divot in these birds. Then I did the exact same thing with the ink, which is the black from Waverly. And I very, very lightly wisped it across the birds and all of the branches. Then I used this color called Sunset Rose by Home Decor, and all I'm doing with it is painting the flower buds. I'm just going to paint them that real pretty pink color so that that will kind of pop away from the rest of the can. Then I went in with the color Cashew all over the birds, just very lightly. I just dry brushed it on. Like I said, I want all these different colors so that they would have so many different dimensions to them, and they're really going to be pretty in the end. I wanted to get just a little bit more detail than what I was getting on the birds, so I mixed up a little bit of black paint with white DIY wax. And that wax is the Debbie's DIY wax. I love to use it on everything. It's very buttery, and you can mix any color with it and make your wax that color. So we're going to wax up our birds, and then I actually wet my finger and use my finger to rub it in and distress it, and it gave it a beautiful effect. Then I went right back in with that cashew and did the exact same thing, but this time I used a small little detail brush, and I put it mostly on the wings and around the head of the bird so that they would look like real birds and have different colors and dimensions to them. Then I took some lace, and we're going to wrap this around the top and the bottom. I'm just going to put a little dab of glue and put my lace on there and go all the way around. I left some of the lace sticking up so that I could tuck it back down inside the pot. Then after I got it all the way around the top part of the little can, I went inside and put just a little bit of glue around the rim there and pushed it down so that it would be on both sides. Because when you put your plant in there, you're going to be able to see that lace on the top part, and I wanted both sides to look good. And I did the exact same thing on the bottom part. I took an old candlestick from another project that I had done previously, and it was already painted and distressed, but I just went over it very lightly and distressed white back over it to take off some of that distressing because it had a little bit too much for what I was wanting. I just cleaned up the top, and then I just glued my little tin right to the top with E6000. I hope you like it.
Young, and we didn't want to be exposed. Even though it was cold, we were never wearing proper clothes. Always trying to be cool, trying to be those bad guys, smoking cigarettes behind the school. Always trying to be cool, trying to be those bad guys, you know. I still think
For DIY number 2, we're going to make some pocket posies. These are just little soup cans, small size. You take the bottom lid off, so you got bottom and top lids off. Make sure it's cleaned out real good. And I just used my hands and kind of squeezed the way that I want it. You go very, very carefully and slowly, and you're just squeezing the bottom. And then once you get mostly squeezed down, you just use your mallet and you pound it together tightly so that it's closed up all the way. You don't want your dirt falling out if you put real plants in. So I gave both of them a really quick base coat of the white Adirondack. We're going to use some rice paper on these, and you definitely don't want that silver background showing through your rice paper. So that's why I did a quick white coat. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. I used the Mod Podge called Hard Coat because these are going to be outside with real flowers in them, and I want them protected. Now, I just did this in sections. I put down about half of the Mod Podge, and then I just laid my little picture down, and I used my brush to let it fall where it wants to. See, you put your Mod Podge down, and then you just kind of let it fall as it wants to. The rice paper is a lot easier to work with than napkins. It doesn't wrinkle as easy, so you just go slow and you'll be fine. And this came out with absolutely no wrinkles, and it's a beautiful picture. On the other one, we do the exact same thing. You put down Mod Podge on half of that image back there, and then you just let it fall where it may. And then you put it on the other half. And then once you have your image on there, I go around the edges really well to make sure that they are sealed. And then I go across the front of it. So I mixed up my baking soda with this color called Lilac. I did want texture on only one of them. So I did the half and half, or 1-to-1 ratio. It was about 1 spoon of paint and 1 spoon of baking soda, roughly. I mixed it up and put it on there with my little sponge. Then I had some of these little molds, and they just came from Amazon, little cheap molds. And I put my clay in those, and I just made my cornstarch, and I pulled them out, and we're going to put these on our little tin cans. And I just kind of sped through this part putting them on because I had showed you earlier, and I have other videos where you can see it in more detail. You just basically put your glue on the back, and then you put them down, and I put one on each corner of both of my little pocket posies. I did the exact same technique where I mixed up the antique wax, the Waverly's Antiques wax and water, and I put it all over these little molds because once I wipe it off, it's going to bring out those beautiful low areas. That wax just seeps right down into it. After I had wiped off my antique wax, I go over the whole thing with my Debbie's DIY wax, the white wax, and then I just wipe off the excess. Then to make a little hanger, I take one of those ribbons from the Dollar Tree. I tie a knot in both ends, and I use that knot, I glue it just inside the sides of my little pocket posy, and that's what's going to hold it up. It's so adorable. Now, I do have a crocodile, and I could have poked 2 little holes in the side and put wire, but I think that this look was just perfect and dainty with that rice paper because that Victorian looking ribbon just set it off. And I did the exact same thing for the white one that I did for the purple. Then I took some Slick. It's called Slick, and it's made by Tulip, and it's basically like puffy paints. And I just made little dots all the way around the outline of that picture. And it dries that way, and it dries hard, and it's just so pretty on these. I had a mold that had a teeny tiny little bird, and I made him and to set right on the ledge of that window. So my one little pocket posy has a 3D effect on the front.
What's it like to be the one that he turns to when he's out of answers? What's it like to be the one that he comes to when he wants to dance? And I wonder what's that like? I have got him on my mind, but he doesn't know my name.
Now let's jump into our last DIY of the day, number 3. This one's super easy. I found this at the thrift store. They have a room in the front. It's garbage, basically, and you go in, and everything in there is free. If you see something you want, you take it, because at the end of the day, they throw it away. Well, I found this old coffee table tray, and I thought, you know, we can do something with this. It had a hideous picture of a horse smoking on it. And it was soaking wet in the back. And look at all the dings and divots. And it was just terrible. But we're going to take care of that. I sanded it down really good. And I got all of those old dings out of it. So what I'm going to do is give it a couple of coats of my white Adirondack. We are going to take a piece of drop cloth that's the exact same size as the backing. And I just made a new backing since the other one had been wet and it was ruined. And I just used some poster board from Dollar Tree. And we're going to take this beautiful little bunny print and you lay it down face first. And you put your heat resistant tape down. And I just put 2 pieces. And that's just so it won't shift around because your colors would look funny. And then you just put your piece of wax paper down. And I put my Cricut Easy Press on the top for 60 seconds on 400 degrees. Hey, if y'all stuck through this video so far, you are champions. Thank you so much. I've been so sick this week, but I wanted to make sure that I got a video out for you guys. I don't want to miss a week because I love doing this so much and I love y'all. And you're my family and I just never want to disappoint y'all. So this is going to be in my Etsy store, this new print, and it's gorgeous. Look how pretty this is when I pull this away. It just takes my breath every time I pull that paper up. So I take my piece of drop cloth and I hold it tightly and I flip it over. And all I'm going to do is just glue the back of this down and I glue it close to the sides there. And then I'm just going to cut off any excess that there is hanging over when I'm finished. So when I finished gluing it down, I flipped it over and I put that glass back in the tray and then I pushed it down and it was a perfect fit. It was very good and sturdy, so it's not going anywhere. I didn't feel that I needed to put any nails or anything in it because it is perfectly still. And then I just cut off the excess. And that's it to this one. I hope you guys enjoy. And just think, if I wouldn't have found this tray, it would have been in the garbage the exact same day. Now this print is available in my Etsy store. It's Kathy's Crafty Boutique. And I also leave the link for it in the description box. And anything else that I mentioned in this video, like from Amazon and stuff like that, all of it is in my description box. I thank each and every one of y'all for stopping in and spending some good time with me and just chatting and crafting today. Now, I know that there was a lot of DIYs cram-packed into this one video. I sure do hope that you've found some great spring and Easter inspiration. And did you know that if you are on a phone or a tablet that you can just tap on my face right here and it will subscribe you to my channel? It sure will, and I would love for you to do that. Also, if you liked this content, I have another video right here that you can just tap on, and it'll take you there in a minute. I love you guys.